Got enough industry. That's probably what you want.
But you know what? I'm here.
That's right. That's the important thing.
All right, well, thank you all for joining. So today we have scheduled for this particular session for you guys to kind of do a deep dive into real estate leases. But before we kind of get started with that, I kind of wanted to understand what are you guys looking for in terms of knowledge right now when it comes to AMT Direct?
I think it would be good maybe to do like a quick intro of who folks are. I think we have more than enough time here this afternoon.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me just jump in there for a second. I think it would be good to kind of go around the room, and if everybody would just give 30 seconds on how they use HarborFlex right now and the kinds of things that they look for, just to give you an orientation of who your audience is.
Yep.
Because the audience today, right now, is a little bit different than the one you had this morning.
Absolutely. Yep.
Get all the debit and credit people this morning.
We had a lot of fun. I don't know what you're missing.
Want to go?
All right, sure. Jeff Wagner, I'm senior analyst, and currently I use HarborFlex for taking a look at lease metrics, taking a look at annual cash flows, that sort of thing. So I'm primarily interested in the reporting and financial aspects.
I'm Sharon Marie, I'm Senior Transaction Manager, and I use HarborFlex on a daily basis to look up lease details, lease options, lease abstracts, expense matrix, critical dates. You can't think of anything else, but I'm sure there's more. I'm in it every day.
And you're researching existing.
Right, correct.
So you're not entering new data?
No.
Okay.
I'm view only.
I'm Jeff Bowling, I'm transaction manager also, and I would just tag on to everything that Sharon said. I mean, every day. And certainly the way those leases have been abstracted, it's such a good source to look under clauses to see if landlord responsible or tenant responsible for some kind of repair, some kind of issue that comes up all the time.
I'm Molly Walker. I'm the commercial property manager, and I definitely just view HarborFlex, but I primarily look at facility-related issues, if it's either landlord-specific or if it's tenant/MedStar specific, as far as responsibilities for repairs and maintenance.
So you're looking more at like clauses?
Sure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Terry Neal, Senior Transaction Manager. I use the database the same as Sharon and Jeff. I do run a lot of reports, critical dates, as well as 2-year out reports, and that's about it. Yeah.
My name is Margaret Abrams, and I am a transaction management coordinator, and I support Sharon, Jeff, and Terry. I use HarborFlex for pulling reports, also dumping new leases, space use agreements, and renewals into the system, as well as certificates of insurance and sending off utility bills.
So when you actually do input data into the system?
She uploads. But you're uploading, not necessarily abstracting.
No.
Hi.
I'm Sherry Kramer. I'm commercial property manager for the North Baltimore region portfolio, and I'm pretty new, so I'm learning today.
Okay.
But I'm back up to Francine. She's been helping me tremendously, and of course, if I need anything, I call Jerry Dixon. So works for me.
Kim Penny, Director of Transaction Management. I use it for all the same reasons the transaction managers use it daily, in and out. First thing I open in the morning. I do pull a lot of reports. In particular, the portfolio report is important to me because I can filter on a bunch of different things based on that report. Expense remaining report helps me with understanding what remaining obligations are in existing leases. So a lot of the different reports.
So
We should definitely spend some time on reports.
yeah. Just trying to think. Okay.
Hi, I'm Francine Succeedi. I head up the property management team for CBRE, and I use
HarborFlex primarily to look up leases, review clauses for responsibility, regarding landlord responsibilities versus what the tenant's responsibility might be. I also pull, the main report that I will pull is the portfolio report. Out of HarborFlex, we can dump that down into Excel, and I will use that and massage it and split it up. So when I'm working with my team, just to clarify, sometimes we're changing up who's gonna be responsible for what site. Pulling the report to review expirations, et cetera. That's the main report that I will use. I am a read-only. Actually, every single person here in this room is read-only. We do not do any input. The way we use HarborFlex right now is that we are sending the information to our Memphis HarborFlex team, our Memphis Portfolio Services team to abstract leases, upload the leases into HarborFlex lease data, and the Memphis team is the team that's actually doing the keystroke in HarborFlex and processing the file that's sent to MedStar on a monthly basis for them to upload into the MedStar's PeopleSoft system. So MedStar knows what to pay to third-party landlords, or they know what Memphis, actually Memphis doesn't, we're not doing any billing right now. So Memphis, HarborFlex is only used on the AP side right now.
So you have involvement on AR too, though, don't you?
Yeah, we are involved in AR, but she's asked about the HarborFlex system.
Right. We should talk about that.
Okay.
We're AR as well too.
Okay. So the Memphis team, have they been trained up, or are they the
They're,
7?
that's the PSG team, the folks that were on the phone for our last training.
Okay. All right.
And just to expand on what Fran said, we do have 2 monthly meetings with the HarborFlex team to go over payables for the upcoming month, as well as the variances. So we interact with them at least twice a month to review prior to it being sent off to AP for payment.
And actually, to expand on that a little bit, I end up interacting with them more just because I may have questions on what they abstracted, how they abstracted, or how they can certain data. So if we need clarification, we can do that. We can't underestimate the critical dates report, because that's really important to our team and keeping everybody up to date on their particular portfolios as it relates to termination options, expiration options, renewal options.
So who's processing AP?
PSG. You're not here.
That's the Memphis team. No, currently it's CBRE Portfolio Services that's processing AP right now today.
I mean,
We use the system when we use the system.
no one in this room that will be using the system
Okay.
next year.
So for any of the things dealing with AP, will you guys be working with that team is what I need to know to understand.
In the same way we do now with our Memphis team that manages the HarborFlex system.
Okay, so have any of you on the AP training last time? I know 1 and 2, maybe 3.
Yes.
So,
One of the things that I do as far as interacting with our Memphis team and HarborFlex is that a lot of the larger operating expense escalations with regard to AP, that landlords might send, I generally review and then will ultimately approve those. There are lots of times we have to go back to landlords and ask for clarification, additional information. There's errors sometimes or corrections that need to be made and then
so is it a safe assumption to say for AP that the other PSG team, not the Memphis team, will be then working with you guys, and they're going to be the ones writing the reports and then forwarding them to you to review?
We run our reports now on our own. We have the ability to do that, but they can customize them for us, or,
they send the variance report.
I'm sorry, I don't know what reports you're referring to. I can pull up,
For AP related stuff, it would come from Memphis today, right?
Yes, a lot of it is already in template form, and I can pull up a critical dates report today, I can pull it up tomorrow morning, I can pull it up, next week.
So what they've done within
Standardized.
HarborFlex, they've
posted basically a queue that would be a pull, that we can pull down and say, okay, we want the portfolio, report for this period, okay, or the latest one. There's several reports that are posted out there, templates in a queue that we can easily go and pull that data when we need it.
Because with AMT, it's gonna work a little different, which is why I wanna understand
Right.
how. Because from an AMT perspective, you can either pull the report through the actual AP module, or I believe, wanted to check, there is a report, a standard report in the AP, in the report builder, but the problem is, not necessarily a problem, but there are gonna be, from my understanding, processes around reports that are getting created in the company folder. So it's gonna be a little bit more restrictive than HarborFlex was, which is why I wanna understand what you guys need, because I don't know who's creating your custom reports, and they may need to be created to suit the specific needs of what you're doing currently in HarborFlex.
I think the team that was on the phone last time would be the team that would be responsible for customizing those reports
Okay,
at the direction of this team,
okay.
but these guys wouldn't have access to it.
One of the other things we also do quite frequently is change allocations for a specific site. If a end user comes back to us and says, look, we want to do 3 intercompany leases, so we will change the allocations that are input into HarborFlex, so that those rents are paid accordingly.
I think we need to talk about that from a business perspective outside of this conversation, because AMT is not gonna be easily able to change those frequently.
I don't know how frequently we change them with the new site. I shouldn't say frequently we change them. White Marsh changes frequently. Outside of that,
White Marsh is the
outside of
best
that, it's really
example.
a new lease is uploaded. We might have to clarify the allocation or make a tweak here or there, but I wouldn't say that's frequent. Wrong word for me to use.
And I would say White Marsh and certain of the MedStar ambulatory services sites,
Absolutely.
where they're doing subleases or changing.
But a lot of those are journal entries.
If it's done via sublease, it's actually easier. If it's done via an allocation, it's more complicated.
Yeah, White Marsh is the allocation.
I know, that lease is the bane of my existence right now in AMT. It's very difficult. We're being challenged to ask our leaders if we can just do it differently, just so you know, so.
All right, so nobody's abstracting. Everybody needs critical date reports. Clauses, uploading documents. Okay, so, I mean, that's not far off from what we need.
But we don't upload documents. We do not upload documents.
She does.
You uploaded it directly into HarborFlex?
No.
No,
You upload
no.
it to Memphis.
No, that's different. She's sending an email with.
For them to upload, I'm sorry.
Right.
Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so,
We also look at expense metrics. If I wanted to see, somebody else to call and say, what's the monthly rent? What's it on a per square foot basis, the expense metrics? And then what's the rent stream? Can you look at that and tell us, when it changes? So all those items too that are looked at, those are looked at on a daily basis.
That, also the creative budget, portfolio budget.
That was definitely brought up in the first session too, like what could we use to leverage for
I don't
budget?
know if you've talked to, I'm trying to remember who it is now, every year at audit time, there's a special report that,
Rent rating?
yeah.
It's the whole reason that we need AMT going forward.
Okay.
all right, so. So let's talk about a couple things that you do need, because I think everybody here, for the most part, has saw the dashboard. You guys have all been through the training, right? The new links that were sent.
All right, who was here last time? I think it was Kim, Maris, and Jeff. Who did the online prerequisites in Sitel? Few of you. All right, so we should probably talk at a super high level, but I don't think we need a long time. I think,
Yeah, I'm
we'll talk about like what we talked about in the first session with the groupings and the
All right.
leveling.
So one of the bigger things that, I'm not gonna spend too much time on the dashboard, but one of the bigger things that I keep hearing from everybody is critical dates. How do you track critical dates? Well, there's a couple ways that you can do it in our system. You can either choose to go through our activities widget, where you can actually set up to be automated. And so every day you would get an email that states, here are your critical dates. here, you know, is the date that it's set to happen, and you'll get a reminder depending on how frequent you do it. Most of our clients do it every day, every single day, until it is set to actually happen in the system. So that's one way. You can also choose to go into Report Builder. There are critical date reports in there that you can run for any given time period. I honestly see more clients using the activity widgets because it's individual to the user and they can track whichever dates they'd like to track. It's not a situation where what I do, you have to do, or what you have to do. If I'm only responsible for a certain subset of critical dates, I don't need, you know, to track what everybody else is tracking with their user. So one of those, again, is going to be your activities widget. This is set up on a per user basis, meaning you have to go in there and set it up yourself for your user.
This was a question I asked once before.
I think it might be the same question. So there's time frames in there, and we typically look at least 2 years out, and I think the last time frame was 1 year out, I think.
It goes up to about 5 years.
Does it really? Okay. So I was looking at the drop downs when I looked on the training.
Yeah,
Okay.
it may have only went that far, but there's a scroll bar that you can scroll through, and it goes out to about 5 years worth of data that you can look forward.
And one of the other, I'm sorry, one other thing relating to that is that the dates, or the critical dates drop off once the time frame has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So that worries me a little bit.
Well, it's meant for you to do an action item with before the date.
100%.
So at that point, once it drops off, you are gonna have to put some reports in place that you're going into Report Builder and pulling for any dates that have already passed the technical critical date mark.
We're gonna have them set up as custom reports then, I think.
How much time do you spend, you download something from HarborFlex, do you spend a lot of time manipulating the report and sorting it and working through it?
And formatting it, just to make it look nice, to make it readable. And one of the things now HarborFlex does, so if it's a portfolio report, there's one of the things I just can't stand about it, is you have the entity, you have the address. I'm sorry, before you have the address, you have the city and state, which makes no sense whatsoever. It should be after that, but that's just the way it prints its report. So I leave them that way, but it just obviously makes more sense to have the city and state after the address. And it also prints the location name and the address, which are really one and the same, so I have to get rid of one of those columns.
And so your portfolio reports from HarborFlex, are they just straight kind of exports, whereas like if I took an Excel file, it's
Yeah,
just
they
column by
dump
column
them
by
into
column?
Excel.
Yeah, and we have a portfolio report with rent. We have a portfolio without rent. So if I want to see with rent, it'll show the monthly base rent, the monthly outback total, and then I can put it on a per square foot basis myself on the end by adding a column.
So what we should do, and I want to make sure we get to all your questions during this training, but I think we should make sure we have copies of
Those reports.
a couple of sample reports so that we can go into AMT and say, okay, because we've done this, we already did it on the sort of, somebody asked the question early in the process, okay, I've got to give somebody a 5-year forecast of my lease expense so they can put it in their budget and their forecast. What do you have that works? And they have something that's close. It's not exactly what we want because, for example, it doesn't have the business unit department in it. So as we figure out where those fields are going to live within the system, we can build a custom report that adds them into it. But I think it would be helpful to have these reports so that we can bump it up against, okay, what does AMT have that is as close as possible? And then we can take that and build off of it to get you what you need.
That's probably gonna be your best bet, because a lot of our reports too, are structured differently. So what you're asking for in a more kind of just blanketed data in an Excel file, our system can do that, but our reports that we've built aren't necessarily like that, because a lot of the reports that we're building are more holistic to an individual lease. So it's giving you all of the lease information. It's giving you the address. It's giving you non-financial clauses. It's giving you what you're doing in charges and options. And so basically,
And that's the problem we have on the AR side, where we can't get a nice, simple rent roll, okay?
you should be able to though.
Yeah, to date, we haven't. I think we kind of gave up on it, to tell you the truth, which we need to revisit. And so I think it's just generally good, just as an item, Katie, if we just send you some sample reports from an AR side. I think even going back to the simple MRI, some of the simple MRI reports,
That'd be
which work perfectly, and it might just be a custom report you have to do.
Yeah.
The biggest issue that we had when we were on the AER side was getting reports, and the reason that we still to this day from AMT don't have good, easy reports to work with is the business unit department coding.
And I don't think we should dwell on that, but
Yeah,
basically,
but you know
it was
what
not well
about it.
thought through on where that would live in AMT because the transition happened so quickly and we didn't have the right folks involved in this decision-making. We are talking about storing it somewhere entirely different on an ongoing basis for all of our leases in a way that we think we can more easily have it pull into our GL, more easily have it pull into our reports. So we're kind of taking it out. We're going to keep, we should talk about groupings, but right now the business unit department information for AR is stored at the grouping level. It is now going to be sort of stored in an actual data field at the lease charge level.
In AR, it's at the lease charge level now, I believe, because they had to move it there because originally.
They had to move it from the location level to the lease level.
To the level, yeah.
So let's talk about the level for a second, because I think it gets confusing, and I talk about it now like it's easy to understand, but I've been doing this for like since November, and it still confuses me sometimes. So there are locations and leases, and this was covered in the video, but basically a location is a physical address. You could call it a property, you could call it a building, you could call it a location, you call it whatever the heck you want to call it. It's a physical address. One location can have many leases, and that could be, one lease with one rent stream, or it can be one lease with many rent streams, or it could be, like I said, those are the things that it could be. So originally, business unit department was sort of the location level. That created a problem because some of our locations have one lease that is distributed to multiple business unit department combinations, like MAS, like 8010, or like White Marsh. So then we moved it to the lease level so that at least it could be associated with the individual legal document.
The correct business unit and cost.
Exactly.
That's what we did.
So that was our solution in AR based on the way the AR is set up. Now that we're moving the AR data into this other environment, so we have a whole new environment that will have all of our AP real estate leases, all of our AR real estate leases, all of our intercompany real estate leases, and all of our equipment leases. And we are working, we're like 90% there on design of the system that will capture all the fields and be able to group things in such a way that is logical for all of those leases. And in that process, we've determined that department at that lease level grouping doesn't make sense for the same reason I just mentioned. On the AP side, there are so many properties that are allocated to multiple business unit department combinations, that just won't work. You'd have to have a trigger there that said other, and then you'd have to go somewhere else to find that data. So then we're like, well, can we just store all the data somewhere else? So I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but so there were the locations and then leases, and then underneath the leases are suites or spaces.
So for each and every space, you can have a multitude of charges. And I think what you're trying to get to is that information will now be housed at the true charge level, as opposed to anywhere else in the system where you could have, because if you have, say, 25 base rent charges for that one lease, that's 25 different combinations that you have to have. So we're now housing it at an individual charge level to essentially make it easier on the reporting side, the AP side, and potentially even the AR side.
This general question, this other place that you're talking about, so because right now we've got, whether it's AR or AP, there is a file that's sent every month to general accounting. So, and it's uploaded, that data is uploaded into PeopleSoft. Will that file and that data no longer be coming out of AMT, but out of this other place?
No, the other place is still within AMT, it's just a different spot, different table, different, whatever you want to call it.
So Katie, this is a question, as it relates to a specific address, say 9101 Franklin Square Drive, that's the one that has a lease and then multiple amendments, which add other spaces, right? There's different rent streams, but it's still the same master document. are they now gonna be different records?
It'll be one record with multiple suites. So basically every unique rent stream needs to have its own space, or what I'm calling a suite in the system, correct? So,
So for every charge you see, it's going to be directly linked to a particular space. So no one space in the system can have multiple line item entries for that one charge type.
All right. So what about when you have a sublease? An intercompany sublease and it's for the same space?
so you would basically, you have your master lease, your regular lease, that would be in there, and you put all your charges in as you paid them to the landlord.
And it's to that space, call it Suite 200, right?
Yep.
That's where your charges are.
And then what we do is we create another lease for the intercompany piece, and we create
Sublease.
within that lease an expense and an income.
Okay. And it's got the same suite number though.
That's okay.
Okay.
As long as they're different charge types.
And what you have though, the difference here, and this is where we ran into some problem on the AR side when we were setting it up. And let's stick with 9105, okay? The landlord there is MedStar Ambulatory Services, and so the tenant's Franklin Square Hospital. You got Suite 200 and you got those charges. Now Franklin Square Hospital is a sub-landlord and has sublet space to, I'm gonna say Children's Hospital. They've brought in another like outside third party that's gonna be running a program in there a couple days a week or something like that. So you've got, and this is where the AMT team got really confused because it was the same address, okay, same suite, but you had two different landlords where the rent was going to. So you've got Mass, who's the main landlord, and the rent from Franklin is getting paid to Mass. But then Franklin's the sub-landlord, same address, same suite number, but they're getting third-party rent coming in under a sublease.
So I didn't realize we had that.
You've got lots of that.
I didn't realize that the sublet, like,
So where you were tracking
the
it down.
intercompanies were then being sublet. Like, why wouldn't the external party just
Yeah, that's
rent it from Mass?
Yes, but is that normal?
Yes,
So-
it happens a lot.
Yeah, no, I know it happens a lot, but because it's technically a third party of what you're already doing to they're your tenant, so technically that tenant is their tenant, so you're still tracking it down to their technical tenant paying them.
Yeah, because now you've got a sublease that you've set up where Franklin is a sub-landlord and a third party is a subtenant.
But it's a subtenant of Franklin.
Yes,
It's almost like a sublease underneath an intercompany lease, is what
Yes.
she's explaining, and I don't know that we had
I don't know
that.
too many.
Knew we had
we
that.
have some of those, we do. And I don't know if it makes a difference.
in the AR?
Well, we,
Right, well, that's, that
we're
was.
here to talk about both.
example that I threw out, gotcha. But you could be looking at it from the AP side, like if you're now representing Franklin, okay, and from Franklin, there's the Franklin Intercompany owes Mass whatever the rent is. I mean, because you've got, when it's an intercompany lease, you could just, it's depending on what perspective, who you're representing in the documents that you've got to, and reports that you're preparing, whether you're looking at it from an AR side or an AP side, right?
We can limit them. Yeah, they should, let's go to 9105, so if you go to,
So we were talking about different buildings. You were talking about
It'd be easier to go to
location.
AR, and then 9105.
Oh, I
Franklin had
9105.
If you go to the location, we can see all the leases and locations. But 9105, right,
It's different, but you have a third party landlord there.
Correct.
Okay,
Can you
but
do
it-
building list? Or,
You can flip it interchangeably either way.
we don't have it, we don't have it. Building name 4, go to number 4. And then go block building name.
White Square Professional, it was at the end there, White Square Professional Building.
Okay.
Go down. I saw it in the list. No, just use your bar there, scroll down. White Square Professional Building. Why is there only one lease there?
It's probably because it's in there as, well, no, there's 5.
leases.
There's one location, one physical address.
So
Okay.
here are all of your,
So those are showing as all AR leases, so.
now are any one of these technically your intercompany?
Yeah, why isn't Franklin Square Hospital lease listed
Let's
there?
go, sorry, can I drive for 1 second? I wanna go
We're
back.
missing the biggest lease in the building. I don't see Red America there. The intercompany leases aren't there.
Let's see.
It's Red America.
Let's do this. Here we go. Right?
And this is the AR portfolio.
No, this is our test database where we've uploaded all of all of AR, all of AP, and a number of, equipment leases as well.
Imaging, oh wait, there it is, second one up, not below that,
So these are all leases.
right there. Yeah, so,
Where's the location?
Well, actually, if you scroll up, is that the one you wanted?
no, the one I want, if you go up top, I can.
So one of the complexities in how the system is set up is because we are using contract workflow, which is basically a way that leases can be reviewed and approved in the okay.
Okay.
And we want that workflow to be loosely based on business unit. We're calling it financial reporting group. So like if all of the MMG business units would set up, sort of follow the same system workflow as an example. But in order for that to happen, for sites where we have multiple leases that have different lessors, we actually have to set up 3 locations. So this address is set up under Bay, it's set up under Franklin, and it's set up under somebody else because
Why Bay?
Or wherever Maz is.
It should be Mass, but I noticed it used the word Bay, and that,
Bay is Maz.
it was the old Mass.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we
And
call
you're
it.
using the old name?
That's how we still use it for financial reporting purposes. That's actually the legal name of the company. It's a DBA. Maz is a DBA.
Really? That's not, okay, we need to check with legal.
I don't know. I'm an accounting person.
Yeah, because what I understood is because they didn't want to create, never mind, I'm going down it.
So maybe we should just take a few.
double check.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it looks like for this location, this is the location that it's at. There's one intercompany lease here so far. That is this right here. So what
That's
you're
right.
saying is,
But
now
there's
this
more-
person
there's more
would
than
then
one.
have a third-party tenant.
Correct,
So,
subtenant.
okay, so on the subtenant side, what was the issue why they did not do a sublease?
So there was a sublease, but it was complicated. Well, I'm saying when we were setting up AMT, there was a problem with having 2 locations with the same address, but associated with what would be a different landlord name. 2 different parties for the same suite, same space, having to bill and collect rent for. Let's keep going. Just skip this for now. Just keep going, because they're going down into the weeds. But
It's an important issue though, because you have
It is,
an
there are
because
weeds.
at the end of the day, you guys are gonna be using this one system to meet every single need.
Right.
So if there are things that need to get hammered out, now's the time to hammer them out before you guys actually take this live. Because what you're gonna be doing in your old database is no longer going to be being able to be done in this database.
So why don't you take this as a topic to be examined further, because I know there's certain things you're trying to hit on your agenda, right?
Well, this is more for you guys.
Yeah,
It's things that need to get hashed out come up now, and
Because what we wanted to show you today, if nobody knew anything about the system yet, and you hadn't already been in for AR, and these guys hadn't already been training, and we hadn't already watched some videos, I think we really, I'm trying to find that stupid agenda, but we wanted to cover sort of generally where you can find information in the system, and then we wanted to cover reports. So, because the sort of back office team it's really more important for them to know that, and you guys just need to know how to get the reports from them or how to run them yourself. I don't think we have another 3 hours, so we can spend some time working through some of these issues. But if it would be helpful, before we dive into the issues, to do some of the overview, to just give you an idea of what the heck the system looks like, where data is stored, where charges are stored, how it's built up, because again, like I said, it makes sense to me now, 6-8 months later, but it's.
And then another thing is of course workflow. So you're now going to be introduced to something that you guys weren't introduced to before when you're dealing with AMG Direct and the AR system now, is because with that, You can just go in and enter a lease, that information is there. But now you guys are gonna be dependent on where in the workflow process that particular lease lies when you're trying to get information. If it's locked for any reason, if it's pending submission for any reason, you guys won't be able to get that data until somebody goes through and approves it. I don't know technically on the real estate side just yet who that approver is going through essentially.
Have you mapped out a workflow yet, or are you still?
We have the workflow mapped out. Yeah, we've already worked through that. That's been out there for a while.
So how will the workflow impact this group? I know it's going to impact PSG, but if you just think of day in the life of a lease, so.
These guys will not be involved in it. It'll be PSG, you, and either me or entity finance.
Okay, and what point does that workflow start? So
So
at
it
some
starts-
point, we have a letter of intent, we get through legal, and then are we in workflow before we go to legal, or are we?
So it's a good question. It's a little, it should start at the same time that you would normally be sending a lease to me to look at it for a fast search. So, and I think that my review is often concurrent with legal's review. As long as we think that the economics of the lease have stopped moving, meaning the dates, the dollars, any allowances, any free rent, that kind of stuff. As long as we think that that is the best and final offer by the landlord, we can start our workflow.
And so what's gonna happen is, as your PSG team inputs the information, it's gonna go through 2 rounds of approval. First round is going to be where, say, if you're the first approver in the process, you're gonna approve the name, you're gonna approve the date. Once that gets solidified and you approve that, it's gonna go back to whoever the submitter is. They're then gonna abstract all of the spaces, non-financials, documents, everything in that particular lease, then charges, and then it's gonna go back through the workflow. If you're the first approver, it's gonna then be dependent on your dollar limit. Say if your dollar limit's $100K, all of the charges combined for the life of the initial lease, if it's under $100K, it's gonna go to you, you'll approve it. If it's over $100K, you will still need to approve it, and then it's gonna keep going through the workflow until it hits the last person, and based on their dollar limit approval, it could be, if it's, say, 3 people in there, it's gonna go to you, the next person, if it's over their dollar limit, they have to approve it, and then it goes to the final approver. Once the final approver approves it, that's when everybody will have access to actual concrete data that is, hey, this is complete, all of these charges have been validated, all of the dates have been validated, and then it will be open to those in the system.
This isn't taking the place of an LRA.
I wish it could.
Yeah.
I know, an LRA is still gonna have to happen out.
This is additive.
Oh, wow.
We're working on top of it.
But you guys won't have to sign off on anything. It's gonna be the same people that would normally be like talking about and reviewing a FAS 13 today.
It's just that you may come in and you may see things that say submission pending, or you may say lease locked due to, such and such being, abstracted. So when those type of situations happen, there's really nothing you guys can do. You have to wait it out.
Submission is pending. Do we have any idea where in the workflow it's pending?
If you set it up, you can see which workflow approver it's currently with, but
If you're not part of the workflow, you can't.
Yeah.
You can see that it is in workflow, but you can't see who it's with. Now, are there reports that we could leverage to see like where things are clocked?
There's workflow reports.
I'm sorry, can we go back? At the point where we're submitting this, are we submitting an LOI or are we submitting a lease?
You're basically submitting an execution copy of the
An
lease.
execution copy of the lease.
And once it's all, this process we're talking about here, what the workflow is essentially taking the place of the accounting review and approval today, more so than anything else. We have real estate involved because we're not responsible for getting the economic terms right? We're just responsible for doing the math with the economic terms that you give us. So we've got Rick involved and the back office folks involved in making sure that the dates, dollars, numbers are right, and then I go and do my math with the numbers. So we would put in an execution copy or execution-ready copy of the lease as we route it through approval. Once we get through it and we say, okay, it's an operating lease, Katie sent her math, she's approved it, she's changed the status to show it so that it can just feed our balance sheet and we can start paying rent on it. That's when you would go execute it, and then you drop in the executed signed copy of the lease.
So take a step back. date.
I would
She's gonna
input that
email
based on
you.
what Kim would provide to me like she does today.
All
So
right,
she would still
there's-
provide that
So
part to me
there will
today.
be an email communication of comps and information back and forth along with the workflow.
Yes, and what we could do, which we haven't really kind of built out this process, this part of the business process yet, is if we wanted to retain comps in the system so that we could support our fair market value, which frankly we should, like, we don't have a place to put it today, but if we had a place to say, like, this is where we came up with our fair market value, we could store that in the system as well.
Yep, create a
If
folder and
you
store
have,
it
if
in
you're
there.
gonna go through the workflow, you might as well have a form that you
Put
fill
it in
out,
the system.
and then you're always keeping it. Otherwise, you're still chasing around people's emails
Yep.
and you're going.
Yeah, I think we should use the system.
That brings up another good question.
But then it's like, if, like, we've been in situations before where we get comps, and then we're like, are these really good comps? And then we gotta go take it out and put it back in. So that's just, you wanna make sure what's in the system is like the final answer. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you should be able to, go back in and sort of update it, that as new information becomes.
And documents don't re-trigger workflow,
Documents do
so
not
you can
re-trigger
add a document
workflow.
anytime without.
So then it adds sort of, you think about the next question is, then why don't you just automate that test? Because that's
It is
pretty easy
automated,
to do.
but we need someone to review it and make sure that it's operating.
Okay, no, what I'm saying is the Excel part of it, so it does all of that work.
The system does it all. I just have to go in and say, okay, is this right? Are the economic terms that Seabury gave us, what's in here? And we have to, so the fair value can be input into the system. It cannot be automatically populated in the system. So you can give me your spreadsheet with your comps. We can attach that as a document to the lease. But then when I go and I look at the accounting calc, I need to put in that fair market value of the property. And then the system will say, you know what? The PV of the payments is 76% of the fair market value of the property. It's an operating lease.
So just from a process, standpoint and trying to lean out the steps and consolidate the time, because that's what you do with technology, right? You want to try to make things easier. You might think about building that in such a way where Kim's putting in sale comps and whatever the comps are.
Unfortunately, the way that the security, like, I would not otherwise want non-accounting people to have access to the accounting module, which I think makes sense, right?
No, we're talking about
No, I know.
let me finish.
Okay.
So what we're talking about is having an input form, no control, but for instance, the CBRE team is actually going to the field and getting the comps. They have to
Right.
either email them or put them into a form in AMT.
Yeah.
So if they put them in and they have the base information and they push the button and it says, hey, green, this thing works, then it goes to you.
That's
And
not,
you get to review it and say, okay, these are appropriate, and then you get to approve it before it goes to the next level. Otherwise, somebody might have to wait for you or your backup to get back from vacation or you get out of training, and Kim could have been getting new information if she knew that moment when she put it in, hey, this doesn't work. And why wait a week or two?
well, it shouldn't take a week or two, but it takes 2-3 weeks today, so that's just how our business process is. But unfortunately, the way that the the way that the system does the test, I would need to give Kim full access to our accounting module in order to
We
allow her
wouldn't
to do
want
that. Exactly. So we could create a form and design a business process such that you provide me all the information I need. But I can't put it into the system until it's routed through workflow. It won't generate,
Yeah,
I cannot do an automated calculation without having it has gone through all those.
But you could do it as a test without actually accepting it. So in other words, you could build a module that all that information goes in. It's just doesn't have full access. It's a standalone workflow. Because the workflow is standalone as well.
Well, here, you could think about doing something like a TDA widget, like a custom widget.
I know that.
You can put that information in a custom widget. The only thing is, custom widgets aren't a part of the workflow process. So whoever is approving the lease, so if it ends up being you to approve it, the first approval, you're gonna have to go through and look at the lease from a standpoint of just looking at the lease, and then you're gonna have to go through the actual workflow to actually put it in the approval comments, which still isn't a bad thing. Or the submitter would add all that information in, and that way it would be available for you to actually approve.
So I think Rick's point is that today, because our process is not systematized, these guys can take a lease to me and say, before it gets routed for anybody else's approval, they kind of get the accounting approval on the front end. That's business approvals too, obviously, but not like the hey, we can sign this contract approval. And they bring it to me and I say, you know what, this isn't gonna be an operating lease, we need to go back to the table with the landlord. And then they go back to the table and we figure out what we can do. Not having bothered anybody else for approval, but we can't do that in the system. But we basically have it built that the approvers are, you know, PSG is inputting the lease. Maybe somebody at PSG is the first approver. You're the second approver to look at what PSG did to say, you know what, and then it's me. So unless you're gonna fall off the face of the earth.
We don't even care if it's a workflow. As long as there's a spreadsheet, something that will give us a preliminary pass or fail. Because what happens is, just, you know, the logistics of it, you're like, okay, well, it doesn't pass, that's fine. But that triggers a week or two's worth of work just to go back through legal, get documents redrafted. So if you knew up front, even though it's not part of the quote formal workflow, you put the information in based on.
For her to get the information now, has to go through the workflow and be completed through the workflow.
I know, but think of it this way. It's sort of like having your calculator, adding 2 and 2 together and saying, oh yeah, it did come up with 4. I wanted to check my math before I sent it over to Katie. So in other words, it's a pre-screen that it passes. And so I think that would take, you talk about keystrokes, we're talking about saving 3, 4, 5 weeks of, it's a big deal. So you just need to think through that. So.
A TDA widget couldn't build like a PV test, could it? No.
You're not getting the PV.
So-
Should have picked IBM for that one, right?
Well, here's what I'll do. Jeff will put a little spreadsheet together and we'll give him the.
Well, I mean, what we could do is I use this as a TDA. I could share with you guys a template, but
It's just directional because it's just an MPV.
But you don't even need the PV. You can do general, okay, my lease payment's for this, my comps say that it's worth $200 a square foot. Am I close to 90%? If it's close to 90% not PV'd, you might want to go back to the table.
But it would be nice if we just had a little spreadsheet. You say, this thing works, you've looked at it, you've approved it, it's a good first view. And then while Kim does that, I mean, right now, we're 3 weeks out on a critical facility because we just can't get there, right? But if we automated this, it would help operationally a lot.
Well, it looks like that might be a business process that you.
Well, I'm trying to get off the manual process that we have today. That is creating another manual process because the system's not capable of it. What we built in the system was basically, if you guys get it to us at the same time you get it to us today, which again, it's been operationally approved, you get it in, it comes over to me. It's actually probably faster than the 2 to 3 weeks.
Wouldn't you want them to do the math ahead of time?
Should they do it today? No.
Why not?
Do you do it today?
No.
Matt?
No, I do the math today.
Fast now.
Because they're not accountants. CPA should be doing that.
But if they have a spreadsheet form that calculates that, then they
But you
would
could
know.
use a simple Excel formula if you wanted to do that, like a present value of a.
Many moons ago, there was a template that you provided.
Right.
That you gave us, that you said, okay, then we would plug that in but we still sent it to you, here's the information we plugged into your template, and you still took it and did your review with it. That was probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, what's happening now is that it's not just as simple, from the business process that I heard was built, it's not as simple as just
It's
looking
not.
at that.
There was a template.
We could
where
give you a
plugged it.
litmus test template. We have that today, that's what we use today, but the problem is, it's not, a 5-year lease template would be different from a 7-year lease template would be different from a 10-year lease template would be, I can't just build one template that does it all.
Jeff could build that and. You're good with this.
And you don't know what interest rates to use because the interest rates are set in our system. So we stopped providing templates like that because we wanted the CPAs doing just the accounting calculation. So we could probably, if you know Excel well, you could probably use general, PV formulas to do a litmus test to check, okay, am I close to 90%? Without PVing, it's very simple math. If you're over 90% not PV'd, then Google fast 13 and see what your rental rate needs to be. You know what I mean? I don't think we should be adding additional manual processes to what we're trying to systematize now.
The workflow that you are all discussing ends with who?
It ends with the whoever the final approver, FASB final approver is, technically changing this grouping here at the lease level that says FASB review status. Once that gets changed, then it goes through, so it's.
Then it goes to accounting. So when we put in a lease, it'll be put in as pending FASB review. So that means, you know, you're putting it in, you're putting the economics, but ultimately somebody's able to be accounting on this baby, right? I go in, I look at the accounting, if it passes an operating lease, I then switch that status from pending to approved. Then it goes over back to Rick for approval. He approves it and we can start paying it.
What about, okay, so where does the LRA come in there? I can't, so the LRA comes at the end of that?
At the end of that.
After it goes back to Rick. So Rick shouldn't technically approve it in the system until he's ready to start paying on it.
Okay.
Until you have a signed LRA and a signed lease. But that, once I've seen it and validated the economics result in operating lease test and I change that status, our piece is done. Let's like today, I give you a FASB sheet, might float around for 3 months before you sign up on. But it would go back into Rick's queue, and then as soon as it's signed, he can have PSG add the signed documents to the lease and approve and move
I think
forward.
we need to have, it's really critical because MedStar suffers greatly for missing opportunities and causing a lot of work. It's all form over substance. That's all it is. And we waste a lot of time with that. So we got to try to clean up the process as much as we can with this technology. It should help that. So I think we need to have some workflows and maybe get PSG to map out these workflows, because if we're not improving the system, we should be smarter about it. But if it's taking us longer, then that's not much of an improvement.
I don't think it is, unless, like I said, you're gonna fall off the face of the earth, where I am, which I don't think either one of us is going anywhere.
It's not falling off the face of the earth. It's just, you got $1 million projects that are waiting for approval, and people are busy. They're in training, they're on vacation.
Right, but if the only people are you and me.
Well, so you can have 5 backups, but if they don't understand what the transaction is, it's a problem. So I'd rather have the data cleaned up as much as we can up front. But I think it's not for now, but I do think we need to map out the workflow and have a conversation around that.
I can resend you what we
I do think we
decided
need to
on the workflow.
NPV form.
Yeah. Rick's looking at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, for workflow purposes, in terms of what you see in the system, when you see something that says pending, something that says locked, pretty much you can't do anything with it until it gets approved. That's just the reality when you see that nice big red bar. The red bar that goes across the top of this lease, and it says lease is either locked due to pending workflow. It could say currently in some sort of, it's basically, it just is a big old bar. It would say pending submission or locked due to workflow. So basically, nothing in there at that point is approved. Keep in mind, to understand kind of how workflow is, anything that gets touched in the lease general information, anything that gets touched in the payments and receivables screen will automatically trigger a workflow. So if somebody was to come in here and they were to change a grouping on here, that triggers workflow. If they go into payments and receivables, they change, even if they add a note into payments and receivables, that triggers workflow. Anything within the actual screen of that widget will trigger workflow. So it's something that, it's a very particular workflow in terms of, it doesn't go by actual fields, it goes by entire screens, which is a little different than some workflows that are out there.
So right now, when we send a new lease to our Memphis team, a new lease has just been signed for a property that has to be built out, a space has to be built out. So the rent's not going to be two for 6 months, and then you might have 3 months of free rent or whatever. They, due to their processes, they won't abstract that lease until they start paying rent.
You could do it now without it, because our system can handle future payments. So it's about when do you put that actual rental stream in? If you're putting the rental stream to coincide with when you start paying, well, then nothing's going to generate in terms of invoices until then.
So then the only way you know when to start the rental stream is by us either giving you a commencement agreement or a substantial completion letter or something, correct?
Or it could be a situation where they abstract all of the information and they just don't put charges in. And they wait until you provide them whatever that document is to put the charges in. You do, so you have to build in lead times for that.
But you're saying charges, so will we still be able to see the monthly rent whenever that monthly rent starts? Do you know what I'm saying?
If you have it ahead of time, so if you're saying that it's gonna take 6 months to build out that space, but you have all of your particulars at this point in time, somebody can come in here, they can build out the property, they can build out the lease, build out the space, and then what's gonna happen is their payment isn't going to start until whatever date that they deem necessary for it to start on. So you can put a lease in here that has future dates in the system. So the lease can.
I just want to make sure that we can access the critical information from that lease prior to the lease started, prior to the rent commencement. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Because I can come in here and I can put a lease in here for the future. I can come in here and I can backdate a lease 5 years from now. The system's as flexible as you'd like it to be.
And what documentation will the system allow, or will MedStar want to put in AMT? Meaning, Memphis, I guess, again, based on their protocols, they only want certificates of insurance, they want leases, they may want a W-9 in there, we'll put the FAS 13 in there, so that's important if we need to reference that at some point.
And the LRA.
And yeah, thank you, the LRA.
But, floor plans, we have a floor plan, is it,
You put floor plans in there?
I'm asking, is that something that we can do?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm asking too, is so what other items can we put in there?
That kind of stuff is an administrative decision, so I don't think it does not matter to me from an accounting perspective, but
They basically said it junks up the system, they don't want to put too much stuff in there. So it's as opposed to a storage or database, storage area for the LOI, if you want that, or, and more so it would be like Terry's saying, the final floor plan, or.
Is that more on the AP side that you're having that issue?
It's not an issue, I just like to store as much stuff in there as possible.
I know, but we're just saying they chunk up the system with that HarborFlex or
Okay.
AMT? That's-
HarborFlex.
Yeah, so that's the question is now, if you're moving AP over to AMT, there's not I think there is a storage issue, that's fine.
On the AMT side?
As far as capacity?
No, on the HarborFlex.
Oh, yeah, on our side, you can store as much as you want.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a matter of, I will say this, files, folder structure is an overall global setting. So you can't have folder structures for just say what you're looking for this one property or what you might be looking for this one property. It's an overall. So my thing is, if you're gonna start storing a lot more with the folders here, just be strategic about the folders that you are creating and understanding that those are, everybody has access, well, everybody can see those folders.
When do you set up that folder structure? Right now?
we haven't set it up yet, we're refreshing our data right now, and we're more worried about the data than the documents right now. But if, we do need to build that in the next 60 days, basically, 30 to 60 days.
So
So,
the way we thought about these were sort of day one critical things, and then there was a whole bunch of day two things.
Sure.
But I think your points are really important in that we should have standard structure, kind of the same stuff. So you've got, CAD drawings, work plans, documents, deeds, whatever you might have, but we should get, kind of a list of what we might want to keep so that it's, apparently we can't be unorganized anyway. So we have the same folder structure, maybe it's just, alphabetized with, 15 or 20, different,
And you can do subfolders as well. So you could have, your hierarchy folder is always gonna be your lease documents. So then under that, you can split it if you needed to say, okay, accounting, administrative. You can have all of those, and then within those, you can then subcategorize it out. Additionally, you have two sets of folder structures. You have folders at the property level, you have folders at the lease level. A lot of the clients that I've been working with, they split them out. Things like floor plans, things like aerial photos, all of those things go at the property level because they are truly explicit to the property. Everything else then goes at the lease level because it's pertaining to the actual lease itself. So you can do it that way.
So
Like a W-9 would go under that section. Certificate of insurance would go under the lease section.
Now, yeah, when you do things like that, it's a matter of making sure everybody understands where to find that information, because in our system, when you upload documents to the property, they cannot be seen at the lease. When you upload documents to the lease, they can't be seen at the property. So as long as everybody has an understanding of what documents are going where, it's never normally an issue.
I have a question for you. Are you simply involved with this for training? So you're not one of the people from AMT that's technically working along with Katie and others that's gonna be setting up structure?
She's been working with us because she knows a lot about you're like the reporting person, for sure.
Because I just I'm just trying to understand how much of the conversation we're having today leaves after training.
So the conversations that we have.
Never leave it, unless
Pretty
you
much,
write.
I don't.
And somebody else at AMT says, well, I never heard that.
No, so pretty much what happens is a lot of the time.
this as well.
Yeah, a lot of the times I'll work with like the real estate consultants, I'll work with the PMs on different scenarios that will work, because our job with the company involves heavily in QAing a lot of things and seeing what will work and what won't work. So a lot of the time I'm working with like your current real estate consultant, who is Lindsay. She's absolutely amazing. She's great. But you know, she'll come to me and she's like, hey, I have a question. They want to set it up completely outside of however I've done it before. What are some ideas that you have? And so a lot of the things that I'll state here, I'll simply just let your real estate consultant know, hey, this is what we talked about. You might want to bring this up in conversation with them, set up a demo of it and what that looks like. But I am not the one actually making the
I'm
decision.
asking the question because from the perspective of the folders that are out there, the information that's out there, you have stuff that's purely lease and rent related, that deals more with payments and data and what finance needs, and to a certain degree what transaction management needs. And then there's the property management needs. So yes, the documents are there, but things like the floor plans, certificates of insurance, or even things like, other things like we like to throw out there from a property management perspective on the buildings that MedStar owns, like elevator licenses and, you know, just other information where we haven't had a centralized database for that before.
I think we can absolutely throw that in there. I don't think we have, storage concerns in AMT. I will say there is a folder, like a generic folder structure that was built in the system, but I was just gonna say, like, bring it up, see what we have. It looks like the folders are.
This is there right now, lease documents, and then under lease documents, it's breaking out by financials in general. And then under general is email and maintenance. And then if you scroll further down, it looks like we have legal, and then under legal is current and pre-lease.
So what about floor plans? Where would that go? Would you put that under general?
So it depends on where you'd like to
No,
house
that's
it.
a lease document.
Exactly.
That's not a property.
Here's where exactly, that's where it's going to be, because I have some clients that will separate the two. Property is property, lease is lease. I have some that are like, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to store everything at the lease level, and I'm going to get very granular with my folders.
Then you'd have lots of duplications of floor plans. So what does it look like at the property level?
The
If you were
same
in
exact thing, except it says property documents.
So I think of that as an AP structure almost versus an AR structure.
It's gonna be interchangeable.
It's similar, but.
It's gonna be, when you're looking at it from a lease, since our leases can be both AR and AP, the folder structure is gonna be the same. It's just your lease level folders. And the same thing for a property, it's property level folders. So
We can build that however we want. We can probably.
So on the property level folder, for instance, floor plan, like if you wanted to put the building floor plans there, things that might deal with insurance or certificates, you know, certificate of occupancy for the building, override licenses. I'm trying to just think of other stuff just as far as the central repository, where property information is. Because right now we've got CBRE, we've got our box, okay, and then MedStar, we have shared drives on the MedStar system, and the way the shared drives or the S drives set up, there's stuff set up in all different kinds of ways and manners, but if there was one central repository that.
yeah, you'll see at the location page, There is a document section here.
Okay, so what is it for location then?
It's whatever you'd like it to be.
Okay, so there's nothing set up under it yet.
I don't know if there's nothing set up.
I think there's like a default setup that's
Yeah.
just put in there, but we can
Yeah, you only
literally
have
build that
location
as we see fit. So I think what might be helpful is we can dump out that like default structure that we just saw. Is there a folder structure at all in HarborFlex today, or is it just kind of there? Everything's there. Everything's in documents.
That's safety documents, though, that have nothing to do with.
How about AR? Is there an AR
There's
structure?
nothing there in AMT now.
Okay,
There's nothing.
so, I mean, if you guys have examples from prior experiences, other systems, whatever
Okay.
that you want to provide, we can build it however we
Sure.
want it to be.
Can you provide what your default structure on a location level
Yeah,
is? There's nothing.
It's just one folder?
It's just one folder.
It's just this
It's
location.
it's completely customized per client.
Okay.
So you come up with what you want the folder structure to be, and that gets implemented.
Okay.
So,
But they might have
floor plans
suggestions,
for
right?
the building, like, come on.
I know in AR, I started seeing, 2 folders, the lease level and like correspondence. And the correspondence in that folder is like POI, and then maybe our transmittal cover sheet.
At the lease level, but that's the certificate of insurance for a particular tenant.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about at a location level, okay, that's the lease level you're talking about. At the location level, it's a different structure
Or built by building.
by building.
so again, it's up to you how you guys
Okay.
want to design this. And again.
That's one thing we don't have any limitations on. We can put as many folders as we want, call them whatever we want. We just have, it's gonna have to be consistent. So you have to think about, how can you name it or structure it in such a way that's gonna be applicable to both AP and AR leases and equipment, although honestly, on equipment, all I expect to have in there are lease documents. So if you have one folder that's like legal documents or lease documents or whatever, that should suffice for what we need. But that's been the biggest challenge in sort of identifying how we want to build the system is how can we make it work in such a way that it works for everything we're trying to do in it. So we don't have to keep a separate environment for AR.
All right. Any other questions, concerns, certain things that you're seeing that you have questions on? So I assume that everybody knows how to do your activities widget for critical dates.
I don't think many of them watched the video, so we should go through that.
Okay, and then how about everybody understands the grouping structure? Do you know what your groupings are for MedStar? Okay, let's go ahead and start from the beginning. All right, so let's start with your activities widget. So again, anytime we reference widgets here at AMT Direct, we're talking about anything with a blue header bar. That is what we consider a widget. Well, especially if you're talking to somebody in support and you're telling them something is wrong, they're going to ask you, well, what widget is it and if it's outside of a module. And they're expecting you to tell them what that widget is. So if it's a document search widget, if it's the activities widget, they all kind of have a header on it, even when you're looking at a lease summary or you're looking at a property summary page. So you'll see for the activities widget, you can select the configuration icon. It's going to default to configure your activities, your event notification. So this is what the event notification, the user event setup looks like. What you're going to do is you're going to come in here, and this is individual to the user, meaning that we can't set this up for you. This isn't something that's a default. This is something that you go in and you set up per your user. So you're going to log in, and what you're going to do is you're going to go through the events. You're going to select all of the events that you would like to receive notifications on. Now, a couple things to note with the notifications and how they work is it is going to be based on the access that you have. So if you only have access to certain leases in the system, you are only going to get notifications for those leases. You aren't getting notifications for anything you don't have access to. So you're going to come through and you're going to pick all of them. So I could come through and I could say, okay, well, you know what, I'm tracking CPI in the system. I want to see my CPI dates. I want to see when my leases are expiring. I want to see when I need to notify a landlord, what my current term begin is, what my option dates are. So you can come through and you're going to select all of the notifications that are applicable to you as the user. All of your option dates, so option start dates, option end dates, when are your drop dead dates. All of those are dates that you're gonna come in here and you're going to go down the list and you're going to select. And they go all the way down to
Space and.
Yeah, what is that?
Space and date, is that the expiration date?
Well, let me be very so it can be and it may not be. So when you have a space end date, depending on the type of contract you're working with, if you're working with real estate or equipment, for instance, they have multiple start and end dates. And you could have the same thing on the real estate side, but essentially your space end date could be less than your actual lease end date. Because I may have something where if I'm a landlord, I have a tenant in there for a certain period of time, that tenant leaves, that space now ends, and then I start a new technical lease with that same space, and it has a different end date at that point.
You mean a renewal? Excuse me. No.
So your space end dates control your charges at that point. So if I have a.
It's like if we had I keep going to the 8094 Sandpiper because that's one of the ones that we've painfully walked through in this environment. So all those leases there's 3 different suites, 3 different rent streams, but they all have the same dates. But say one started June 1 and the next one didn't start till September 1. Those would be 2 different space dates, space start and end dates.
Because they're 2 different suites.
Mm-hmm. But it's all about the dates associated with the charges.
But the end date is a termination date, the expiration date.
Well, no, because you could have a space that could end before your lease is terminated, depending on how you're utilizing the system at that point.
You mean like a move-out date or something like that?
No, it means like space has, for that lease, so you may have a lease that starts 1/1 of 2019. It goes all the way out to 12/31 of 2025. In between that time frame, I may have 3 different tenants come in that one particular lease. I may have a tenant that's leasing 3 different spaces from me for that particular building. So I have my lease date, my master lease, they're renting 3 different spaces, all to that actual lease. One starts here and they may go, okay, well, we only need the space from 1/1 of 19 to 1/1 of 20. But for another space that's linked to that lease, it's more on the, you'll see it more for equipment, honestly, because they may have multiple assets attached to a master lease.
So here's an example. So we have a master lease. This is an equipment example, but I think it'll help us grasp this concept and move on. So we have a master lease with Xerox. Let's just pretend that it's not been expired in month to month for the last 3 years, and that that the master lease agreement expired in 2020. But under that master lease agreement, we can today enter into a 44-month lease for a copier. So if I went in and on May 16th, I entered into a 44-month lease for a copier. For one copier. That space, a copier would be a space in this instance. That space would have an end date 44 months out from now, even though the lease end date was 2020. Well, we'd have to update the 2020.
Doesn't really apply to.
I don't think it will apply on real estate.
Walk us through.
The only other thing I can think of is.
What I'd like to do is just walk us through a very simple real estate lease, because this group is not going to be involved in equipment. There's not any hybrid leases. So if you had a start date on January 1 and it was a 5-year lease, how do those apply? Just to start on a very simple.
Yeah, you can choose.
So what do I want to pull in my widget?
I'm going to say this because, again, we can't be liable to tell you what you should and shouldn't be tracking for dates. But I would say, if this was me, I would probably come in and say, okay, well, I probably am not going to do CPI dates, because I don't believe you guys are using CPI dates.
We're not.
I'd be tracking.
We have a few, but we're not using
the module.
Because there's no expiration.
So I may choose lease expiration dates. I may choose my lease vacate dates, because that's something that you may know ahead of time. I may track, now depending on what you are calling your LL notified start date and how you're utilizing that at the lease level, I may be tracking that as well. I may do my LL response end date. Those 2 dates are fluctuated to change based on what you guys determine you'd want to use it for.
Well, there's notice.
Now, you can do a current term. I'll probably do all of my option dates, because again, I'm tracking option start dates, I'm tracking option end dates, and then I'm tracking my exercise dates. Additionally, I'm tracking rental activities, because I may have something where it may extend the option, but I may not start paying rent or something like that until further into the lease.
Let me ask you a question. Each time you click one of those, is that gonna generate an email that's gonna go to somebody?
It will if you'd like it to.
It'll email you if you want. If you check this box on the other side here, they'll send you an email.
Otherwise,
It'll come all together, won't it? Like,
Yeah.
July 31st, all these events are happening. You'll get an email about all those events.
You're gonna have one email per, well, it'd be one email, and that email, say you had 20 dates that you're tracking, you're gonna get one conclusive email with all of the things happening in that, on that day for the different various, critical events.
For everything throughout the
Now,
portfolio.
and you're setting this on a global basis, right? You're not setting this on a lease by lease basis. You're basically saying, if I've got a lease expiration date coming up, notify me within
However many days,
however many days you want, up to a year, up to
5 years,
5 years
5.5.
ahead, and notify me once, notify me every 30 days, every 2 days, whatever. So and that's the email. And
But this is a widget you're creating on your dashboard. So how does this look on your dashboard when you're clicking multiple things? Are you gonna get 10 different?
Yep.
You're gonna get 10 different ones instead of one report, so to speak.
An email, if you choose to get the email, that is one email. But on the actual AMT Direct application, it's multiple lines.
So
for
you're gonna
everything
have
that's tracking.
10 widgets on your dashboard.
Not widgets, it's gonna be one widget with 10 different line items within the widget.
so say your expiration date.
Can you show us?
You have
As
12.
soon as I set this up, so everybody gets the concept of going
Yeah.
through, selecting what you need. Then it's going to be, okay, well, what would you like it to be? Would you like it so that your lease expirations, you're tracking 120 days in advance? It could be that you're tracking lease expirations 2 years in advance, but then for my option exercise dates, I'm tracking that 90 days in advance. So you're gonna go through, and for each one that you select that you'd like a notification on, you have to tell the system, well, how far in advance do I wanna look at that information? Everybody,
What does set all mean?
that's a blanketed one that I'm gonna do, so I'm not gonna go back to
Yeah,
that.
but what does it do?
It sets them all to the same thing, so if I say, I wanna see everything
So you're gonna
within,
get it 15 days, 30 days, 45 days,
it sets it all.
you're gonna get constant, okay.
So I can say days notice, I wanna set a blanketed 2 years for everything in the system, and every single one of these are gonna be 2 years out. I may decide that, okay, for leases expiring, I actually wanna do maybe 3 years out on my leases that are expiring. So you can go through, you can select individual ones. Your frequency on your email go hand in hand. I'm not gonna set this, but basically what's gonna happen is you're gonna set what you'd like in the frequency. How often are you receiving that email with that information being updated? I do not see many people who, outside of workflow, use only once, unless it is something like a to-do list item. Other than that, you're either on an every day, every 2 days, every 7 days, every 15 days. I hardly ever see only once, because you'll get that notification once, you won't get it again. If you want these two, you would select the frequency, then you're gonna select the email. Once you do all of that, you're gonna hit save, and then it's gonna tell you that the user event saved successfully. Now, how the system works is you will only see something on the front end if there is something that meets the 2-year criteria. So if I selected some things and it does not meet my 2-year criteria, then nothing is going to populate in my events to see, okay, in the next 2 to 3 years, these are all of the different events that I have taken place. So you may come in today, it may be missing a landlord notified start date, but come tomorrow, it hits that, 2-year time mark, it's gonna populate on your notifications here.
All right, I have a question. So, several of us are set up in AMT for AR right now. When this change takes place, this is all a whole new database, so we've got to go in, we're gonna get new logins, correct? And we'll have to set up our dashboards for that new database. Okay.
Yep. And you can see for each one of these, you can go ahead and select it. So if I want to see, okay, it's telling me I have 270 leases expiring within the next 3 years, I can select the actual description, and it's going to take me to a page, and it's going to show me all of the critical dates that are happening. You can choose to print this information, you can export this information. So again, you have multiple options to do all of that without even getting into Report Builder. Now, Report Builder, a lot of the times you're going in there is if you truly need a whole lot more information about it and you're putting together customized reports that you would like out of Report Builder to pull. But again, you can export this into PDF, you can export it into Excel, you can export it into a number of different file formats, and you can go ahead and do data manipulation that way.
What else is on there? I think you scroll to the right.
Nope, so for this, it's going to be the location name, which it automatically gives you a link to. The lease that is happening automatically gives you the link to the lease. It tells you the current status of that particular lease, and then it gives you the event date that it's actually happening in the system. So you can see, okay, all of these leases are expiring on 5/31. And then you can scroll down and it will go all the way out to 3 years.
Why is type empty right now? Is that data not in there yet?
No, it's because what you're doing is a lease expiration, so there's no real type of anything. It's all lease expiring. Like, you may pick some here that will have, like, if you had an option exercise end date, it's gonna tell you the type of option it is.
Okay.
But this is all leases expiring. There's no type of anything. It's just expiring. Now, cool thing about it is you don't have to toggle. I mean, you don't have to go outside. You can actually toggle between the different things that you have options with. Now, where if you say you set up to receive notifications on everything, if you use this drop down, it's going to show you everything. It's not going to show you only the things that are applicable to what's currently happening in the system. So you'll have to weed through which one. So if that's the case, it may just be easier to close out of here and then pick your next event. But you can go to any one of the other events in the system. So I can look at my option exercise end dates, and in this one, it says the location name, the lease name. It's giving me the option type. It's telling me the status of that option, and then when is that set to happen. So I can see, okay, for 300 West Lombard, that is a renewal, auto renewal / expire active, and it's happening on 5/16. So again, if you're responsible for that, you're going into the system and you're making arrangements for that. Now, if I've set to see this on here 3 years in advance, I'm going to see that every single day up until the day that it actually happens in the system. So on 5/16, that will drop off of this list, because at that point, it's already happened. You missed the mark on that point. There's no reason for me to keep showing it to you on a critical date, because that critical date is no longer critical. It's already met. And then it will look at the next one for that particular, lease.
Renewal option for Lafayette? It is. It's showing the renewal option for Lafayette.
Do we have them, are you saying?
Those things should be happening right now. Yeah.
Already?
No, it says,
10-year lease?
I know, but it's got March 30th, 2019 in there.
Isn't this equipment though? No, that would be.
No, that's lease.
It could just be, we're still validating the data, and there were some issues in pulling in the data and the way that we had to map things and make some judgment calls. So this is our test database. This is not like our real data.
Lafayette.
Right there, I'm sorry, not Lafayette. Arlington? It's Arlington, yeah. So you're doing Arlington right now?
We just
Okay.
got a short-term extension.
Okay, all right.
And again,
What is it, 2015?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
Arlington.
that's the 14-month extension. Okay.
Yeah, but it's, okay. So that data's just not in there yet.
now, in a situation where you guys log in, you won't see a lot of, you won't see some of the leases that are currently here, because of course, some of these are equipment leases, so they will be excluded from your view. So you're just gonna see solely what you have access to in the system.
You just raised something. So I know you met with the, certain people that were looking at it from the accounting side. I guess those, so your earlier session today were people who will actually be involved in activity in the system?
They will
And actually
be
input?
inputting equipment leases and be part of workflow review and approval for mostly equipment leases, but also small real estate leases, like the ones that wouldn't normally come to me. And we did have some supply chain folks in the room that showed that they're gonna be part of the process.
So what about, finance team, I wanna say from the individual hospitals, and I'm thinking of Harbor in particular.
Linker was here, Nina was here, I know that's not called Harbor, but like, yeah, we had general accounting and entity finance and supply chain here this morning.
Okay, I'm curious about entity finance from Harbor, because they have a lot of, I wanna say, very special situations. Certain Harbor, Good Sam, Union have special situations, and I'm guessing Catherine Clays was probably there.
But we're doing another session, so they might be registered for the other one.
That would be for why, that's true, they probably wouldn't have come here, but, because they have a lot of very special situations for charges on certain leases or utility pass-throughs, and or facilities maintenance pass-throughs, and all of that data comes from the hospital. Our team here doesn't get involved in providing that from a lease perspective. Their charges, for things like it could be what the rental rate changes are, or how they want to pass through real estate taxes, or services that are chargeable under the lease, but only that data is generated by the hospital. So, for instance, they are supposed to be coordinating those charges with AMT, Kathleen, right now. That doesn't necessarily always happen as routinely each month as it should with the appropriate follow-up, but some of that responsibility is really on that hospital finance team. So I was just wondering if you're having these initial discussions with them and then later training.
So part of this is, AMT, system training.
Right.
The other part of it is the transition from AMT
to
PSG. And PSG is involved in those conversations and will, in my opinion, will be more proactive in reaching out and sort of establishing those protocols. But they're still learning that. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you run the call, but they're going to be, sort of shadowing Kathleen and looking at her screen and all that stuff. And there's conversations going on now with Harvard. Those things will have to continue. So you're trying to take, a business process that sort of bounced around from a manual to a half manual, and now it's going into a new system. And so it's going to be a little friction early on.
It's just that the individual hospitals understand that they need to understand that MedStar is changing the process and the workflow. And so now is probably the best time for them to be involved from an input perspective. It's like utility charges and stuff like all that.
So are they basically taking what comes out of Harbor Flex or out of AMT today and then doing something different with it?
No, in one sense, they are providing the information they'll be providing it to PSG to make sure it's entered into AMT to charge the tenant for utilities, for facilities pass-throughs. It's nothing that this team does or gets involved with. But then on the flip side, the individual hospitals should be getting their monthly reports. So there's monthly reports as far as billing and collection and delinquencies that the hospital needs to know about, because then they'll come back on the flip side and say, hey, I got my monthly P&Ls and I don't see where I got paid for the utility charges that were supposed to be passed through to DaVita. Okay, now that's communication that they have with PSG, but this is a web-based system, so they should be able to easily go into the system, look at their hospital, right, what the billing and collection is for their hospital, and easily see that and then communicate with PSG.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of detailed conversations with the NE finance teams on the AR side, to be honest.
Okay.
But the way that the system sort of view security access will be structured is based on your entity. So if you can see leases for Harbor, you can see all leases for Harbor. And we could set it so that if we didn't want them to see real estate leases, we don't have to. But if we set it, we can set it such that they can see all leases for their entity, and they should be able to see that. And then the reporting functionality in AMT, like we've talked about, is really dynamic, and I think we can leverage that. But I mean, are we not using we're using AMT to invoice our tenants today, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's supposed to be.
Okay. So that should continue, and maybe just as we transition.
And that's a lot of
process.
So technically, this team is not involved in that process. This team provides the lease data, and AMT or PSG does all the work as far as abstracting, loading the charges, sending out statements, posting collections, doing the reporting, the monthly upload file that goes to general accounting. We're not in any of that. We don't see any of that. And if there's charges coming from the entity that they're supposed to be, that AMT is supposed to be charging, that's in there. But then what happens is Harbor or Good Sam or Union or whatever entity will come back and say, ask us questions. Because from their perspective, well, Terry, you did the lease for us with Par Excel. but we're technically not in any of that billing collection process. And if they're dealing directly with AMT or PSG, and since it's a web-based system, just as Catherine and Lisa or Adrian Bernenson can go into the system and they pull transaction ledgers, and when they're doing the month-end reconciliation, they can see all that data. Those finance people should be able to do the same thing.
So just to kind of cut to the chase.
Yeah.
So the good news is that through this socialization process with AMT and lease accounting, most of the finance people are aware of the change. So, and I think most of your finance people, even on the lease administration side, are going to have access to the system. Read-only
At least
access.
you, yep.
So
Okay.
they'll be able to get into the system.
Right,
Now,
from a view
part of the,
Right.
Operational, how do you operationalize this thing? So, CBRE's role will be, hey, if this tenant moved in or out, of course, PSG would know about that. If somebody decides that they're going to, Bob Gilbert wants to sublease something, so they're not going to know about that. They're going to need documentation.
Yes, that's where we come in.
Or somebody moves out and they're, 60 or 90 days late, and we decide we're trying to make a decision whether it's going to go to legal or
Right.
we're going to put it to collections, then there has to be an intervention. Is this, somebody that we don't want to sue today for some reason, which has been the case with MedStar on, several occasions. So that's sort of how you need to operationalize it. But I think the technology and the access is there. It's just how do we want to organize
But
it?
that's what I want to make sure that the people that are working on the front end of it now are making sure that those folks are all included, because some of the conversations, just as far as present issues happening, it's, I just feel like some of the entity finance folks aren't as plugged into the AR side as they could or should be today presently. So especially going forward, you'd want to make sure that the entity finance folks are
So we may need to do
plugged in. That's what I was
with
trying
AR
to get.
training,
Yeah.
once we get it all built out.
And, just to carry that thought on further, that is part, having those conversations is part of PSG's AR implementation plan. We discussed and we were part of the last couple of days. So the question is, it's on there, now, does it really happen? That will be the next thing. So.
What he said. All right. Any questions about critical dates in terms of the activities widget?
Just show them how it pops up on the
Yep.
calendar.
But any questions here on what you're toggling between? Okay. So your activities widget and your critical dates calendar go hand in hand. When you set things up in your activities, what it does is it populates your critical dates calendar. Now, normally if you're setting it up for the first time, you have to hit refresh. Any date on the calendar with that orange highlight means that there's something happening on that date. It is not, it can be a multitude of different things. It could be leases that are expiring, option exercise end dates, option start dates. It could be a multitude of things. So if you select the actual highlighted date on the calendar, it's going to tell you for that particular date what's actually happening. And this is another one in which you can print out as well. You can, export it, print it, or do whatever it is that you'd like to do with that information. But again, it's a way for you to forecast out and look at the calendar from more of a visual perspective of what's happening, and it's going to be inclusive of a bunch of different things. So you can see for this one right here, I only have one property, and it looks like the event is an option start date on 5/18.
This is actually an equipment lease.
So in HarborFlex, we have lease ID.
Those lease IDs are going to be carried forward into AMT, so those
The same one?
same exact ones.
Okay.
And we're expecting PSG to continue naming with a similar naming convention.
All right, so you can see I picked 5/31 because it looked like a better date in the system. We have all of these leases that are expiring, then we have option end dates happening for a couple of different options here, and you keep scrolling down, it's going to give you option exercise end date, and we have one option start date down here at the bottom. So again, you select the calendar, it's going to give you all of the different events that are happening on that particular date. From here, you can choose to print, And when you print, it's going to give you the option to print. It's also going to give you the option to export. So that's when you can export into Excel. You can export into Word, I think. Word, Excel, CSV, and PDF, the other one. So you can go ahead and export it into any one of those file formats.
And if you put in Excel, then you can filter it by address or business unit or whatever you wanted to.
So a couple of different ways that you guys can still do some of the things that you're doing, maybe just not a report builder, it's just another easy way to do it. You'll find that there's a multitude of ways to do one thing in AMP Direct. This is one of the ways you can do it.
I have a question.
Yep.
So this looks like it's a mixture of, you've got a mixture of equipment leases in there. It also looks like it's a mixture of AP and AR. Is there any way to say, I just want to see AR, or I just want to see AP?
We can segregate by real estate versus equipment, but I don't think we can segregate by AP versus AR. Now, you could dump that out and filter it.
Or build a report and say in the report as a filter, don't pull in, you know, income leases or don't pull in expense leases. So
this will go to the whole reporting part of it, and you know, part of the pain that we've had so far with AMT is around, you know, sort of the format of the reporting. So I'm confident that you got all the data, you're going to be able to get it into an Excel spreadsheet, but it's just a matter of, you know, who's going to do that and what is it going to look like. Maybe it's PSG, and, you know, if it gets too difficult, they can't figure it out, then they may have to go back to AMT for reprogramming. But, you know, this group is going to be very interested in reporting capability and cutting the keystrokes down so they don't have to dump a portfolio report and spend an hour and a half trying to reorganize it and cut it and paste it. There's only 5 reports or 10 reports they're going to want.
Yeah. Especially if, like, we're focusing on, okay, you're working your AP portfolio, or you're looking at the AR side and you want to look at delinquencies, you know, kind of thing, or rent roll just for AR.
you can do that, but again, it's going to be your filters. You're going to focus on filtering down the information. So when you pull a rent roll in our system, you're going to have to probably duplicate that report out and then pop a filter on it to say, okay, only income leases. Pop another filter that says, okay, AR leases.
Okay.
And then you can get that information.
You're right. That's where you go to the custom reports that we're going to look for.
That tree is, I'll call it the tree.
Probably the word.
So AR and AP are in there?
Yeah.
When you look at it at the location level, everything, any physical address is going to show you all leases at that physical address. If you go to the lease level,
That's when you can break
we
it
have
down.
groupings.
I
You
have
could
it actually
literally,
in there.
we have, yeah. So you could go in and look only at AR leases, only at AP leases.
Now, there's another way, I think, this one, I think here, this has billing type on it, if I'm not mistaken. Has billing type.
Owner lease.
Asset type, technically, I'm not gonna.
Let's take the grouping.
This is asset type. This is taking the property list. So this one isn't really gonna help. So I was gonna say, if this one had taken it, you could just simply use this one. Well, you can do it this way, between owned and leases, they can come in here. You can come in here and, you can filter down between asset types, between owned and leased assets. And then if you do it that way, you can pop a report out on this and it will give you all of the leases that have that information. But this is just a simple lease. This isn't giving you a bunch of heavy information. It's just telling you what's happening in the system. So from my understanding, what you guys are saying is you have some key reports. We have those reports. I know we have the reports, but it's a matter of you guys need them customized. And you need them customized to be broken into both AR and AP leases.
And then beyond that, then we can filter by business unit or however we want to do it, like.
Okay. So let's say I wanted to pull a critical date report 2 years out, but I want 5 different entities to be on that report. Is that possible?
If you wanted to do a custom report, yes.
Can you show us how that would work?
I know we were going to get into reporting. It seems like a lot of questions that have come up in the last half hour or so, kind of the answer is reporting. And we were planning on spending some time in the reporting environment. Do we want to?
I guess my question is to you, how far down, because realistically, when we do reporting, outside of you guys knowing how to run reports, there's nothing else you can do unless you're gonna be creating custom reports. So I can show you all of the reports. My suggestion, honestly, to you is going to be to spend some time going through the reports, figuring out what reports you like, what they contain, and then letting your team know these are the ones we need customized to fit our needs. Here are the customizations that we need for the
For
report.
Terry's question, an example, she would probably run a custom portfolio report, and then she would click on the entity she wants to see.
You can have reports built with filters that pop up. So that way, when you run the report, you pick the filter that you want, or
Does that make
multiple
sense?
filters.
Could you give us an example of a report, just say a portfolio report, so
So
we can see what it
We
looks like?
can do that FASB report. And that's the one I know how to run. I know how to run one report.
Okay.
I was gonna say, do we wanna take a 5-minute break and then jump into reports a little bit, or, do we,
Yeah.
like,
All right.
do you guys want a quick potty and coffee break? We'll do that, and then we'll do some reporting stuff. Back in that kitchen, here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting this job.
2:45 of those.
Uncomfortable. Before it's like.
Well, Tina Cumber, where is Tina? I know, and she's, look, I'll show you, she is, come here, I'll show you.
She's great.
I know.
I'm supposed to get called.
She wakes up that way every day. Hello. Molly. Probably wakes up happy every day. Good morning, world.
I want to be breathing the air she's breathing.
No kidding,
Never
no
hit
kidding.
button or hide, probably.
Say it again.
Never hit button or hide.
But now she's up.
Like 4-year-old romping around.
So what, we'll have 2 months in this database?
They're not gonna, I don't think we have it ready. What is it, June, July, when is the cover date? July. You have a nice, big, huge team of people that knows what they're doing on that.
They know what they're doing on it, but do they know what?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I know what you mean. What? Does that sound like it to me? No. Because
If they did, they wouldn't have any secrets for us to tell.
they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly, thank you. That's it. That's the perfect way to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
Say it again. Cold in here. No. Gee, yeah. Maybe some.
Yeah.
Hey there.
GPG department, yeah.
You're funny, we could hear you in here, like, when you, funny.
It's great to see her.
Okay, hopefully he fixed my phone.
It's just, you know, like, and if you're ever on a phone with Tyler, all you hear is like kids and stuff. Yeah. Not kids, yeah. It's basically kids. But he's really, and sometimes I'm like, do you know how loud you are? I feel bad, 'cause I'm loud too. And is your weakness like a totally open workspace? Yeah. It's like workspace, like, we have small partitioners, so it's not like high rise. Yeah, that's what we have. Ours is like, it's like you can see somebody's head, but not like, you know what I mean? But Alex is so loud to the point where it's like, you're in, like, our boss. You were not even in the same. Yeah. Our boss loves this office that we got because he has like the big windows in it. He's like, I'm about to go move to the other end in the middle of the closet, so I don't have to listen to Alex. With the door closed. Oh. That's funny.
Nope, I'm good, thank you. I'll be right back. Okay.
Room clean up all.
Oh, Katie?
Yes.
I think you invited Ed return to this event.
Yeah, I think you gave me his name.
Yeah, and, that was more for, if he could attend and he had time. He will not be using this database at all. He's asked any one of us to pull information from the database, so just to let you know why he's not here.
That's fine by me. But this is the first training, so I'm not really worried about it, but it's not here because
I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot more training that follows when she actually gets the system set up for.
Well, and the thing is, like, we're actually like 80% there on the system overall. So, I know if I try and do work, it's not gonna work, so. Sorry, just back picture, because oh, that's later. Like, we have it. We have the groupings how we want it, we have a workflow that we want to follow. It's been kind of off by our executive that.
All right.
Does it have to be stacked like that?
How do we use it?
It's like opening a double roller.
Yeah.
When,
Yeah.
You know, we were all here.
And I felt so weird having it before I had everything in my stomach.
You got almost everything back, right? Oh, they were on mine. Yeah, good. We did paper and.
I had 2 snacks.
Don't wait for me, okay?
So there was no one more person, right?
Let's see, Molly and Rick.
We can keep one.
All right, so before we jump into, reporting, I just want everybody to kind of take a look at the groupings that you guys have been set up for this particular database. So from a property perspective, we're looking at this from the consolidated FR group. So you can see that's one of the groupings, because they may be different than the groupings that you're dealing with now in AMP Direct. I don't know what grouping you currently have set up at the property level and the lease level in the database, but this is what they're gonna be in this particular database. So you have the consolidated FR group, you have the building type that you can look at it at, and this is from the location side. So you have the building type, the asset type, and then you have building name. So you see all of the buildings listed out. Now, from a lease perspective, you have business unit, company, entity. That's one way of looking at this information. You additionally have department cost center. You have AR or AP, AR, and intercompany leases, and you can look at the leases this way. You have your AR specialty. Looks like they're gonna be, and I know at least 2 of them. I don't know, Pam, do you know?
There's a couple choices in there, but I don't, some of those are changing.
Some of these are changing. I think the ones that are staying are 1, 2, 3, and I think 6. I believe 4 and 5 may be changed in the, upcoming weeks to something that's a little bit more beneficial for tagging your leases. So I don't know what those are, but I believe at least 1 through 3 and 6 are the ones that are gonna be there when you take over the system live.
Can you look up my address, the quick address?
You can if you wanted to use the search functionality. So you can use the search functionality and you can go ahead and type in the address. You can leave it set to searching global, or you can go ahead and move it to location. And so it'll only search locations for that address.
Can you show us what specialty is? I'm wondering if that means cardiology, primary care, whatever. Because we wouldn't want that thrown away because it's just like one of the categories I think we had in there because we're asked who it, you know, who is it? Is it a cardiology? Is it a, you know, podiatrist? Is it, you know, what the specialty is? I'm wondering if that's what they're calling AR specialty. We have it on the site too.
All right, so it looks like for AR specialty, originally they had, I think they were going down that route, but it looks like right now the only two selections are finance department and nursing department. So I think they may have been going down that route of trying to specialize it out. But again, I honestly don't think, or it could be that they may decide to move it unless you guys make a case for another type of grouping that you would like to see on the leases. So
I think
AR.
we should keep it.
Yeah, 'cause
So if we want to pull up all the primary care leases or all the cardiology leases or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, as soon as Katie gets back in, put that as one of the things, that you guys can discuss with her in terms of getting that updated in the system so you can still use it, but make it more towards the needs of what you're looking for.
Okay, we would have to identify that before what type of specialty it is before we send it off for them to be able to put it in the right category, right?
Exactly.
Well, I believe it's in AMT in the AR database right now, where we did go in and, I know it's part of the transmittal sheet where we specify, and so for a lot of leases in there, we've got, whether it was a cardiologist or podiatrist or whatever the specialty is of the practices in the state. That's how I think it was originally used in AMT.
Yeah, and it may be that
When we created that transmittal sheet.
yeah. My thing is, anything that you're currently seeing in your AR database right now that maybe needs a special hand, or it needs to be stated that, hey, that's something that should probably come over when you guys consolidate the databases, I would say now would be the time to just make sure that, that's communicated. So that way, it's not a surprise when all of a sudden you're now looking for it and it's no longer there because it was never communicated that that was something that was important that needed to come over. Okay. Alrighty. Yeah. Yeah.
Square footage is something we kind of like, like to see.
Really important. I don't like it.
So there's two ways to look at square footage. There's square footage of the location, and then there's square footage at the actual suite level. So of course, a lot of the times the square footage at the location is gonna be like your entire GLA if you own that particular, building. And then you have the square footage at the lease level that's going to be, particular to that particular space. So, this is where you find that information. So here's your square foot rentable. Now, I am in an expense lease, so that square foot rentable probably looks a whole lot smaller than if I was in a location that we actually own the location. But you'll see that there's a square foot rentable. Now, because it's the real estate side, I don't think you guys have a problem, but you can see if there were multiple suites at that one lease, each one of the suites would have their own rentable lease for that particular suite. So if you're looking at this and this was an AR lease, then your square foot rentable would be a whole lot higher in the property, and then each and every space is going to have their own set of square footage indicating for that space.
Can you pull up, because I'm not understanding what you're saying actually, can you pull up an AR lease to show us that? Because I understand that there's a building square footage, but an individual space should show only the square footage for that individual space.
Yeah, correct.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's a lot smaller on the AP side, because a lot of the times it's a one-to-one. So you'll have a square footage, and that may be the same thing abstracted in the actual space.
Okay, so that was not a good one to pull.
Nope.
MedStar doesn't own that location. That's a sublease, it looks like.
That was a land lease, parking lease, let's see.
That's not a good one either. I'm looking for where there's like a whole building where we've got.
Should we sort?
In there.
Do you know a location that we own the building of? What's the address that we own the building at?
Go to 9105 Franklin Square Drive again, that's the building that MedStar owns.
This is the one that's gonna be.
No, yeah, there we go. But go to an AR lease there.
These are both intercompany leases. Go to the second one. I don't know why this is listed twice. These are the kind of things that we're still working out the kinks on, right? Like there's two instances of that property, which would make sense to me if,
Because you got the AR
They
side, you
had
got the
different-
AP side.
Oh,
If you load both databases.
Yeah, but why is the intercompany under one and?
It looks like on these you have different leases, so, I mean, for some, it could have been that when they uploaded it, if it was a measure off and something that was stated inside of it, they would have duplicated it.
So what is an example of so this is.
No, I'm asking her to
These
pull
are
an
the
AR
first
lease, so just pull that one, the advanced medical management, so that's a straight AR.
Not a good one.
Well, and see, that's what, I'm like, why isn't the square footage in there for that tenant?
So at the location level, which is what you see at the very top there, that would be the square footage for the building as a whole.
So why isn't the building square footage in there?
Because it's not an AMP now.
What?
If it's not in the existing AR environment now, it's
It
not gonna
is.
be here. Okay.
Was that put in after, or was it put in as part of?
Do you know how long ago they would have put in something like that, like forever ago?
It's a while ago. I mean, they had a lot of incorrect square footages and they finally corrected them. I'd have to go in, into the environment now.
So I will say that Rick did have, the PSG team doing a sample validation, but I don't think they actually chose any AR leases in their validation because we were basically assuming, hey, it exists in AMT today, it exists in AMT tomorrow, it should not require significant validation. And it could be that if you go to this other property, because that particular location ended up with two locations due to some snafu. One of them has the square footage and the other one doesn't.
Say about this one.
Yeah, that's the hospital that you picked. That's not a good one to pick because we wouldn't have put in the entire.
You know,
square footage
another one
of the
that has square
hospital.
footage?
Go to Surratt Road, go to 7501 Surratt Road.
Okay, so we got 3 of them.
Those are all intercompany.
Those are all intercompany leases.
This is gonna be, one of the things, remember how I talked about before, how everything's sort of built off of our financial reporting group for workflow purposes? When we transitioned to leases, not thinking about intercompany leases, admittedly, we said if a lease has more than one lessor, we need that property set up for more than one lessee. We need that property set up for each lessee so that we can route any leases associated with that financial reporting group, i.e. business unit, will go to the right place for workflow. What PwC, who's our partner in mapping this data, did at our instruction is they also did that for intercompany leases, which should not have happened. So basically what you'll see here at the end of the day is do you know who owns this property? Is it?
It's meant for ambulatory services or what you've decided to call Bay. Or BAM. It's Mr. Ambulatory.
Parkway.
It's not Parkway. Parkway does not own that building.
So what you'll see here when it's right
Yeah.
is one property.
Actually, I'm
with the
curious what you have under Parkway, because Parkway's not in there at all.
This one, or a different one?
Yeah,
That
click
one,
on that one.
what is that? Parkway's not in there.
Has an intercompany.
It's Red America.
Red
They
America.
put Red America on Parkway.
That's where they roll up. So again, this is financial reporting group. So it's, if you were to look at like what Susan Nelson sees when she looks at her monthly financial statements, this is, MMG is all in one spot. And the diversified basically are all in one spot.
Is it possible we're not pulling it up because you got it under asset type versus location? See where you pulled grouping asset type at the top?
Well, I did asset type for owned and, leased locations.
So what are we trying to find?
We're trying to find the total square footage of the building, and it would be under the location, and
It's not gonna work for any of these ones where we accidentally created multiple.
well, that would be every building then. Because every building would have multiple. Because we've got that swap both situations and anything that
So
makes
right
your own.
now, I would assume that it exists, just not. I'm guessing it exists on one of them, but not both of them. So that's not there.
There it is.
There it is. So what happened is they mapped it for one of the properties, but not.
Yeah, that's not the total square footage for the building.
Still not.
That's
For
only
Market Drive?
that's one floor. And.
Okay, so I think we could take the takeaway, total
Yeah.
square footage on the AR leases.
Basically, the buildings that MedStar owns. Yeah, it's not showing the total square footage.
Right now. Over, but it might, like I said, it might, maybe it did something weird and split stuff up, or who knows.
I would just make sure that.
In the AR category, they were questioning.
Yeah.
Would you say category grouping?
Yeah, AR specialty.
No, we don't think that is being, that was
It is
something.
being
It
used.
is?
Yeah, we had, for instance, if it was cardiology, pediatrics, podiatry.
So that is in there though. Okay.
It's in the current
It's there too. We have a
AR.
grouping for it.
But our specialties aren't listed in what you've got. You've got finance and something else in there. So the specialties that we have loaded aren't there.
So, this one right here. All right, so where was that taken out?
Sorry.
Yeah, the finance department and nursing department.
Here's what? Do me a favor, though, come out of here and just go to like the general, like back to the leaf tree or whatever.
And then in here, none of them were actually even tagged with anything.
Maybe it's because we thought we were pulling that. Because I thought, so do you actually use that for anything? Like, I know it exists in the system today. Do you actually use it for anything? Because every time I've asked that question so far, I've basically gotten, I don't use it, but I don't know if somebody else
Well,
uses it.
I think transaction management does, because the question, and I want to say to certain free property management, because the question comes back to us,
Like, who's in the space?
who's in the space and what are they using it for? You know, and so we might know, okay, it's MSG, or it's Washington Hospital Center, but Washington Hospital Center has so many different programs. Is it their heart, or is it a cardiologist that's in there, or is it, you know what I'm saying?
That might have been one
And
where
that's
we
why
said we
we
didn't want it.
specifically set that up.
Well, that is something that's easy to carry over the data refresh. The square footages, I think, we'll have to look at, because it looks like even the ones we found maybe weren't right, but,
You may, if they're doing a data refresh, I remember Lindsay said do everything within the file. I'm pretty sure that's one of the fields you can override.
the,
Square foot minimum.
yeah. So maybe we accidentally overrode something when we were creating
The
multiple
previous one,
properties
so
or something
whatever
like
your
that.
last one is, just make sure that the square footage is right for every one of them, and then it will come through when they do that refresh.
And if you're combining two different databases, I mean, if you were taking information from HarborFlex for leased locations that would have included the intercompany leases, okay? And then there was any duplicate, oh, we didn't put intercompany.
No, there's no
We
intercompany in
didn't put
AR. We
intercompany
tried
anymore.
hard to avoid that.
I just don't understand why.
But that doesn't mean we succeeded. I can reach out to Lindsay.
All right, I'll shut up, Harry.
Any questions on, so any questions on the grouping? You see what's there, again, if you're looking at the current existing, database and there's something that's critical that you don't see that's there, might want to speak up about it before they do that data refresh.
When you say grouping,
That's everything that you're seeing for the location level groupings and lease level groupings.
Let me do this,
we haven't
Francine.
seen them all. I think you need to send us a list of what you have.
So what we we can talk about it right now. We can
I
look
know,
at
but
the
we're not gonna be able to look at 294 leases on a screen and say, oh yeah, you've got them all.
No, but what is in there right now was carried over from the AR system. So I can tell you what's in there, and if it
Or what
is in the AR system and it's not in there now, it's because we said we don't think we need it. So what I can do, I can tell you what the groupings are right now, and then I can send you a note, because I sent Lindsay a note earlier this week that said, these are all the AR groupings we have. This is what I think we need to keep. This is what I think we can get rid of. I bounced that off Adrian. I have not bounced it off of you. I will bounce that off of you.
What about on the AP side? Same thing, right?
AP side, there's no groupings in HarborFlex today, so we've had conversations with with Rick, with PSG, with
Okay.
our kind of cross-functional work groups about how we want those leases grouped.
Yeah, the AP side's easier than the
It
other
is,
side.
definitely.
Yeah.
There are some groupings right now that, one of them is actually called AR-specialty, which we just noticed that it's not correctly populated, but we denoted that one specifically with AR in the front of it, because we knew, you know what, nobody else is gonna use this, but we wanna keep using it for AR. Yep.
All right, any other questions on grouping?
Oh, yeah, so let's tell them what they are.
Yep.
So,
Oh, I just started, so we had gone through the location, and then we ended up on the lease, and that's where we got the AR specialty. And then you have, it was a matter of which ones were we keeping, and I said I thought that it would probably be 1, 2, 3, and 6, and that 4 and 5 were subjected to, but it looks like 4 you're gonna keep. What about 5?
So 5, we need to think about a little bit. So there is a record subtype in HarborFlex today that basically tells you whether a space is, parking, ground lease, yada, yada, yada. That, it's gonna be in the system somewhere. The question is, do we want a grouping for it? And if we do that, then, you know, we have all that, but then for equipment, we also have to have sort of categories that apply to that. So it would be like medical equipment, vehicles, things like that. So you're gonna see some things in there that are only applicable to real estate, only applicable to equipment, but,
What about the type of lease we had? And I would think you have to have that, whether it's triple net, full service, we
Well,
had it.
on the
That's not a
lease,
grouping.
that's a required field.
That's
So,
what I thought.
yeah, that
Okay.
one you don't have to worry about, because it will be there for every
Okay.
single lease in the system.
I don't remember the groupings are in AMT right now off the top of my head.
so the email here, I can
No, I mean,
send you what I discussed with Lindsay. In fact, I'll just forward you our whole email string, and that way if anything that we're saying doesn't make sense, then you can be like, why are these people dumb? Why are they making decisions without talking to us? Because
that's your prerogative.
no, I've been using Adrian as my proxy for AR, but there were several instances where she said, I'm not using it, I don't know if anyone else is, so I just hadn't taken it to the next level to talk to you guys, and that was something that was from earlier this week, so it's not like we're.
Because Adrian and Julie Marlin, for instance, they've got this sort of laser focus on just certain data that they care about for when they're doing the monthly reconciliation. And there's just like other stuff that's not pertinent to strict financial data for reconciliation purposes that's in there.
Is there anyone else from CBR you want me to send this to, or just you?
No, don't just send it to me. I would send it to who do you want it to go to? You?
I feel comfortable with the two of you because you're in the room and you're hearing this conversation. I think anyone outside this room, you can discuss it with them, but I wouldn't
Okay.
want to just.
Did you talk to Catherine and Gleason too?
I talked to Brian Fisher a little bit. No, I have not talked to
Catherine is the one, she has a monthly call with Kathleen at AMT. Catherine is probably the largest user of AMT right now.
She's on this 2-line right now. Her, I'd feel comfortable sending.
Okay, and I can tell, with regard to, for instance, these questions we've got on the AR side with the owned building and not having square footages in there, that's gonna make her nuts, okay? And she's very involved and both the billing to third parties and all the intercompany. She does all the intercompany journal entries manually right now. So she'll be extremely happy if the manual side gets taken away from her, but
Okay. He looked at me like,
In other words, that she doesn't have to do those manual journal entries anymore, but she's also gonna be very mindful if the data is correct, and it's gonna make her crazy if it's not.
I'm writing an email to her right now, to you, and her, and I'm just gonna spread it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that groupings are gonna be a big thing for her, but she's gonna be, really wanna know that the data's correct.
And she does manual JEs because of, I currently have
Company,
such.
JEs, so.
You remember how they asked about like session rents, and that is not something that I think this is gonna be capable of, because if it's literally like 3 days a week, but it could
But
be.
for the subleases, so.
But for the real like subleases that are just true, it has a 1 month.
Between MedStar Ambulatory Services and another MedStar entity, Catherine and Lisa, if it's MedStar Ambulatory Services, I think she's doing basically 100% of those between her and somebody else at Diversified Business Finance. You don't want to leave her out of that conversation.
Yeah, I did, like I said, I started at a higher level, but I will loop her in now.
Have you asked, the team about the session runs?
We haven't tried to look at example, I think we need to look at an example.
Because I feel like I know there's at least 2 other clients that have session runs that are healthcare clients.
Okay.
So they're handling that in the database currently. How far they're taking it is what I don't know, but I know they are handling it.
I don't know if their session runs are third parties or in a company, and if that makes a difference.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I don't know the figures, but I do know in terms of session runs that we do have some.
I think that's
some companies that
session runs.
We've started to, and we're talking about sort of some of the breakdown in categories and we.
Grouping. We started talking about grouping, and then we kind of realized we need to talk a little more about them.
All right, any questions about any of the groupings that you're seeing?
It's hard to say at this point. Honestly, we have to go back and look.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think, we've put a lot of thought into it. I do think that the data that's in there right now does not really give you the full picture of how we want it to work, but as we're working through this refresh with PWC and PSG and others, we're getting those all populated, and we hope that, in the next week or so, we'll have a new database populated with all the groupings, with all the information we want, and then we can go in and really take a look.
Alrighty, so report builder. Now, there were at least 3 of you who were on, one of the other sessions that we did. We kind of talked about, we built a custom report, but I don't believe anybody here is going to be truly building custom reports. So we're going to take a look at some of the reports that you guys have access to. So that is going to be this folder right here. It's the AMT Direct Report folder. So of course, this folder has about somewhere around 300 standard reports that we've created for clients over the years. They're all in here. Now, it will be dependent on what modules you have access to. So when you actually do go live, you won't have access, you won't see facilities and you won't see project reports currently. Those 2 won't be there because you're not utilizing those modules. Now, when you're looking at these reports, we've broken it down by module, and then we've broken it down by submodule within the actual report folder. To get to the folders, you expand by the hierarchy folder, which is the AMT Direct folder, and then you expand down by the different modular folder. So then that's going to break it down into the child folders, where we said, okay, Portfolio Insights contains the following, subfolders: property reports, suite reports, lease reports, contact reports, document reports, event notification reports. So those same reports that you're setting up in your activities widget, we have a report for it in Report Builder. Forecast reports, so forecasting information. Reviewer lease summary reports. So when abstracts get done and you want to review the data that's been put in, we do have abstract lease summary reports. And then you have your data exports. Now, flat files, which it seems that's what HarborFlex gives you guys. Majority of your reports, if you're looking for flat files, are going to be in data exports, because it's literally pulling the data directly from the field, and it's just putting it into a flat file for you.
And an Excel flat file.
A lot of our reports do contain sections, so they're built on advanced report settings. Sections are a little harder to manipulate because of the merged cells. So if you're looking for true flat files, or you want to manipulate some of the data, that can be done with the data exports.
So give us a typical file that you might want to pull up.
A rent roll. Show us a rent roll.
All right, so you have your lease report.
No, it would be a property report, wouldn't it? By owned building. If you have an owned building and you need a rent roll, I would think of it as a property report.
It's going to be a lease report.
That's a lease report.
Because in reports, it's not, yes, it's an owned property, but at the end of the day, your charges are all done through a lease. They're not done through a property. So it's understanding that, yes, you own the building, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the leases that you put at that building. So if you're looking for anything with dollars and you're dealing with rent rolls, they're gonna correspond to where you can actually find that information.
So I want to see a rent roll for one building.
Square footage.
Yes.
For AR,
AR.
you can do a rent roll report by lease, let's see, master lease, subleases,
What difference does it make? It just lists everything.
well, no, because your rent roll by lease is going to give you, it's gonna give you all of the leases. It's not gonna say, hey, specify this particular property, but you can do that with a filter.
So let's run that one. Go crazy. What happened? Hopefully it's not blank. But some of my reports that I was
Hopefully
sent
it's
to the
not
runner
blank and there's not a module. The only thing that would, prevent this from running is if it,
Well, you gotta remember, Francine, like, you tell PSG what you want, and they will be the ones going through these steps to create it for you, and then all you gotta do is go in and run it. And they seem pretty well versed on this. We did a more detailed report folder training with them a couple weeks ago. Actually, it was probably a couple months ago at this point.
I think of it as a rent roll by building, where you, it shows each building with every lease underneath it.
I mean, the way I think about it is this is a little bit of training. So
Yeah.
in an ideal world, everybody should be able to go back to their desk and say, wow, I had training all day today. I should be able to run a report that gets me what I need. That's what you would think, right?
Yeah.
So
Let's
we're not
see
back
what we
at our
got.
desk yet, so now we're gonna say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Where do I go get it?
all right, so you'll see that for this particular report, there is what we call a pop-up filter. So a lot of the times, our reports will have pop-up filters because we're asking whoever's running the report to input their own information. What do you want to see in the report? So for something like this, you're going to tell it it's equal to, and you can see here, it's asking you for the payment schedule, bill period. So it's taking that data point from the payment schedule and it's saying, okay, in the payment schedule, there's a bill period. That is the field that I want to filter on. So you're gonna tell it, okay, what bill period do I want to equal this rent roll to? So a couple ways you can do that. You can select the information here where you can go ahead and key in the information. So if you want it to be 5/1 of, 5/1 of 2019, you can put in 5/1 of 2019. Additionally, you can use the calendar or you can use your function formula statements and you can choose, hey, I want this to equal to, the first day of the next month. Or, the second day of, or the first day of the next year. You can pick it that way. And there will be times where you'll input the information and key it in, and there will be times where you will use the functions and you'll use, the different functions that you have to go ahead and give you formula statements. So I can say, okay, I want to do the first day. The thing is, I can't see these. First day of
Current month, last day of the current month.
no, that was last month, darn it. I'm gonna change that to say 5. We'll do 6. So you're gonna put your filter in, and then all you're gonna do is select OK, and it should run the report for you. Running reports is not hard. I think the harder part to our reports are going to be the filters and understanding what is it asking you to do. Because we're trying to make everybody as self-sufficient as possible in the system. That means understanding the data points that are in the system and understanding how we utilize them for reports. And so you can see it's going to take a second to run.
And this reports are definitely something like, when I sat here and watched Alicia do this a few weeks ago when she came out, it all made sense to me, and then I went to do it myself and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So these filters are definitely something that takes a little bit of time to work and to understand how they work.
And I think that's where we just get back to, we need a standardized template for, here's a monthly rent roll. I mean, it's one of the reports that PSG is supposed to be providing for MedStar on a monthly basis, is a rent roll for the owned properties, okay? And that should clearly show each property separately with every lease underneath it for that time period, okay? So this, when I look at this is all over the place, just like at the first glance on the first page. And then, so now you're telling me, okay, this has got every single lease that you have in the system here. And now, after it's done doing this, we've got to go through and probably do at least 2 layers of filters or something.
You're gonna have to do filters regardless of the reports that you build. So the goal is going to be, you have to provide the information that you want to the team that is going to build the report.
Yeah.
And then you guys are gonna have to input those filters when they build the report for you. So that same part that I just did where I picked the bill period that said 6/1, then that means that when you run this report, that pops up, you're gonna have to go ahead and put in the filters that you're looking for. So if you're looking for a particular lease or a particular date frame, then you're gonna have to put that information in. Because what's gonna happen is, if not, then they're gonna have to build you 100 different custom reports for the same report. So each one of them is based on what you want.
So basically, they could build a canned report that you could basically, it gives you the same exact information for all of your leases for any date you want. And then when you want to go run that report, you have to tell it what date you want, and then you can still have all your leases, and then you could open the document and literally pull it into Excel and filter it. Or you could filter on the front end and say, I only want my leases related to this property. And then, you can't do property?
No, you can.
Okay. And then it will only spit out a report for that property. So it's a lot like a pivot table or a Tableau or something like that. Like you get out of it what you put into it, but you got to kind of tell it what you want.
So there's only, how many rent rolls? You would just need, Francine, a rent roll for each of the owned buildings, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for the property managers, we just need a quick.
So there's six or eight or whatever it is owned building.
Yeah.
These are the only ones
Yeah,
that
I mean,
need rent rolls for.
you've got, what it's doing right now is
Pulling
taking
the whole lease.
500 leases that you have in your system, whether they're AR or
This is
AP.
pulling AP. So we
you
have,
know, and technically there's like maybe 5 or 6 buildings that we need a rent roll for. Okay?
So if we define those, can you create a report?
We need to just define that up front as a standardized report.
That's the thing, is that you can, they can create the report for you. So here's the thing. If you needed it where you didn't want to do the filtering on it, like on the back end,
Right.
then you're gonna populate the filters when you're running the report. So I can go ahead and take the same canned report, run it 5 times out of the system, and then I don't have to do any manipulation outside of the system.
Yeah.
Or you could say, you know what, run it for all 6 of these every single time I run the report, and then when I get it in Excel, I do the manipulation in Excel.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but we actually haven't been able to
It's
get
just
that
not-
yet.
It's just not operationally efficient. So in other
Yeah.
words, we have a lakeside building. It's got 8 tenants in it. And if we just want to look at that building and say, here's our 8 tenants, and here's the rent roll for that month, we shouldn't have to peel through 500, 450 leases to go find that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do that with our canned reports until you get your team to develop the filters that you want on the reports that you're looking for.
but the
So who
PSG
does
can
that?
build that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I unfortunately, I can't do anything about that off the front end of it.
Yeah.
But most of our clients take these reports and they do their own manipulations.
All right, so let's forget rent roll. Put that aside, PSG will take care of it, okay? What would you guys be looking to, like a
Portfolio report.
22 years out,
report?
critical date.
Portfolio,
I think
yeah.
we want a lease declaration report just for Franklin Square.
Yeah, so that's getting down to similar to the rent roll.
It is.
Right. But that's how we operate.
But it's not,
I know that's
we
how we
can
operate.
do that though. Let's show them how they would do that. You won't be, let's show them how to apply a filter for that first.
So for any report in here, say we're gonna do a lease declaration, we're gonna do it with renewal option. Now, I will tell you this, a lot of these reports, again, if you're looking for flat files, a lot of these reports are not flat files.
When you say flat, what do you mean?
Like,
It'll only be a PDF.
it'll be an Excel file and columnized out. A lot of these are gonna have sections with merging cells, so it's gonna be quite difficult for you to do filtering on it.
How do we build a report, a flat file report?
An Express report. So one of the ones that we did in one of the last sessions where it's just column by column by column by column, and that's it. The problem with the Express reports, I think they're great. It has limited formula capability. So if you're looking to do formulas, pivot tables, all those different things inside of that reporting structure, that's not what it's meant to do. It's meant to give you like flat files. Basically, a lot of people who build those reports, they put them into Excel and then they manipulate the data in Excel.
Yeah, which honestly I think is the better way of doing things because that's what we're used to anyway. As long as we don't have to remove subtotals and resort and refilter, because I think that's one of my frustrations, honestly, with HarborFlex today. We asked for a, 5-year remaining expense payments, and there's like 9,000 subtotals and different columns and different merge cells, and all I want to do is know by entity, what is my 5-year expense, and I can't get there without a bunch of cleanup.
This system, if it's done right, should be able to get you there with a click or two.
With the express report.
And
then
you have to build them, yes.
Yeah. But can you save them once you build them?
Anything you guys build, you can put into your company folder, then it's now a standard report. But it's about getting in there and actually building the reports. I think that's what takes time for any one client that we have. What I'm doing is I'm taking an existing report and I'm duplicating it, and I'm gonna place it in my folder, and then I'll be able to work on that report, which is what the PSG team is going to do. They're going to come in, they're going to find some reports that they think may work, and then they're gonna duplicate them and see if it's easier to work off of an already built report or redo the report from scratch based on what the actual needs are.
Would you be able to tell us which reports are flat file?
I'm gonna say about 90% of them are not.
Okay, it's probably not worth it then.
So how about a lease expiration date report? Is that what you're running now?
That's what I'm duplicating in to add in a couple more filters.
And that will be for everything, so that'll just look at, when you run that report, it runs both AR and AP, it looks anything.
Unless I tell it not to.
Right.
So it's either going to run, when you first do it, it's gonna run everything. And then what you can do is you can pop a filter on it that says, okay, I only want this report to equal income leases, or I only want this report to equal expense leases. So a lot of times it's just all about the different types of filters that you put on the report. They're not hard to put the filters on. So you can see, I'm gonna select the report here, and then in the try bar, I'm gonna go ahead and edit this report. We can see what type of report this was built in. Yeah, see, this will be a little, no, you still might be able to. This doesn't look like we have too many merge cells if we get rid of that front header. All right, so this report right here is gonna pull in the expiration date, property code, the DBA name, the suite name. It's gonna give you rentable lease, start date, space, start and end dates, notice dates, terms, option dates, and notes. So that's what is currently set to pull right now, is all of that information.
Did you say square feet? I understand.
This one is set to pull in the rentable lease. So your suite, whatever is in that suite square footage.
Okay.
All right, so say if I wanted to go ahead and put a filter, because again, if I wanted to see this maybe only for income leases. Well, here's where you would go to your reporting options for the report. You click that drop down, here's your filters for that report. This is where you're gonna go ahead and you can add in different filters, but keep in mind, generally when we do this, we start from the beginning, we take you all the way through. Unfortunately, there's not enough time to do that, but you're gonna get a crash course in it right now. It takes about 2 hours roughly to build a very, very, very basic monthly payment report in the system when I'm training. And that's what I take most of my clients through. Well, it takes about 2 hours for the training piece, to train you so you know all of these different fields. But, you know, when you start to do it and you're doing it over and over again, I can build an advanced report in maybe 15, 20 minutes, depending on the type of data points I'm pulling. So the thing is, here, this dropdown is going to contain all of the categories that have been pulled into this report. So when we're talking about categories, we're talking about all of those different widgets that you have on like a lease summary page or a property page that have all that data in it. Those in Report Builder turn into categories. So you gotta make sure that one, the field that you would like, the category is already pulled in. If the category is not in before you can actually apply the filter, you're gonna have to add in the category.
Okay.
Make sense?
Well, what I don't see there, and correct me if I'm just not interpreting it correctly, is, for instance, we have MedStar Medical Group, which is located everywhere, and we have to pull it by entity on a bi-monthly basis. So I don't see entity up there.
You're right, you won't, because this one does not include grouping. So that's where it is, if that's what you're looking for.
So groupings for entity?
Well, it's housed in a grouping, correct?
So
How would
business
we do that?
unit is housed in a lease level grouping.
Okay.
We're not gonna, I'm being totally honest, we're not gonna do this. We don't, I'm just being totally frank and honest.
No, BSG's gonna do this for you.
No, that's right, and I think
instead of you taking time right now to like, all this time to show us how to go through and pull this, we're not gonna be doing that. We're
You
gonna.
just need to know, when somebody adds these groupings, if you have to.
That's what we
Okay.
need, that's what we need to
So
talk
give me
through,
2
what the
seconds.
appropriate groupings are, where we need to, that we're gonna expect the data to be pulled from.
Okay.
And PSG would work with us to set up what is really gonna be, what I'm thinking is gonna be a customized pull down for a type of report that we typically, and it might dump into Excel so we can massage it a little bit later. That's what we're used to now. We can go into HarborFlex now and say, give me a portfolio report with these date, in this date timeframe, and it dumps down into an Excel file in, I don't know, a minute,
Or an entity.
or an entity, like you can
Right.
pull it
Yeah,
by
or
entity, you can pull by site.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and it dumps down into in a minute, and then you can apply the filters in that flat file. It's so much easier.
I will tell you this.
But we need to make sure your right groupings are in there.
It's all about, our report builder is a relationship database, so it's all about those who build the reports knowing the relationships. And then additionally, our report builder is one of the most robust tools out there. But because it's one of the robust tools out there, it's not going to be sometimes as simple as one would think.
And I get that.
I want to preface that.
And I appreciate that, but to me, it's a tool that's being used more by the people that are working in the background on the analytical side versus a user group that needs data and information quickly.
Yeah, and not to say that it can't be done. That's bottom line. Can it or can it not be done? It can absolutely be done. Do I think that you guys may need to spend some time and say, hey, here's our reports? Maybe send them over to your PSG team and say,
Absolutely.
these are what we're looking for, and then let them go and make those for you.
Right.
And then you won't, literally, it will come in and you just hit run.
Give them a wish list of, this is what we'd like to see. If it's something we're not getting now, because we haven't been able to get it for whatever reason, this is something we'd like to see.
Because to be honest, as a transaction managers, when we're meeting with the end users on a bi-monthly basis, we're only talking to that end user, so we only need to grab that information for that particular end user. So, I mean, it takes us 2 hours to put together a bi-monthly report to speak to the end user, and so we really don't have the time to filter through. We need something where we can just click on it, and there it is.
I will tell you this, filters are probably gonna be non-negotiable. I can almost guarantee you on that, and the reason for that, is, it can be, but then what's going to happen is each and every one of you are going to need to get the PSG team to save you reports that are duplicated over 15 times over if you have 15 different end users for each one of you, so you have the different combinations that you're doing with the way that the system is. So I can tell you right now, more than likely, you're not going to get around the filters. But the filters take you 2 seconds to run. They're not filters.
And you don't even need to use the system. You can just dump the whole report out and then say, I can pick whatever end user I want. I just have to filter by the column that says business unit for that end user.
And that we understand, that we can do now, and that's what we're saying. We can run a report at a HarborFlex now, it takes a minute, and then we can apply filters, okay? But this is taking 2 hours.
And that's because
That's to build the report the first time.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
All right.
So once you guys do it and you
To
give
teach someone how
them,
to build a report the first time.
if you give them what you're looking for, when you come in, it's
And
gonna be 2 things. You're either gonna say, hey, for this report here, I need it to all be, or for this report here, I need both income and expense. I wanna be able at any point in time, without filtering outside of it, to go ahead and filter by income or filter by expense, and they can add that filter in, you populate that filter as you run the report. Or you could say, you know what, just give me a blanketed report, let me go ahead and be the one, I just need those fields included in the report, because filters don't have to be included in the report. I could filter on 15 different things from the system, and none of them need to be columns in my report. So you gotta look at it from a dual standpoint and know what you're asking. So if you're asking them to give you a report, it's going to be, okay, do I build the filters on the front end, so when I run the report, I as the user pick the filters, or, hey, I need you to include all of these fields, so when we actually get the export, we can filter on that particular column. Because if you tell somebody, hey, I needed to do X, Y, and Z, and those filters aren't in the report itself, you're not gonna be able to filter on it. So, just so everybody's clear, it's either I want to filter on it when I run the report, or I want to filter on it after I run the report, knowing that I need those data points actually included in the report, and then say if I don't actually want to show it to a client, I can filter down and then delete the column. Everybody good with that piece, at least that?
Yeah.
And like I said, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be doing what I just did right here to go ahead and be able to do this. I'm doing this just so I can add filters so you can see what it's like when it has the multiple filters that you're looking for.
Okay.
So give me 2 seconds and let me pop these filters on there for you.
So how do you answer Sharon's question where this report that you're running right now, we need to see by entity?
Yep, I added in the grouping.
Okay.
Now, if this was the case where you have this report built, you'd have to tell them, I need entity included in the report, not as a filter. Because they may decide that, oh, okay, I'm gonna just pop a filter on there for entity, and then you're gonna have to select it. As opposed to telling them, no, just put the actual entity in the report so then I can filter after the fact.
Filter out what you don't need.
When it's in Excel already. But if the field's not there and you just tell them this is what you're looking for, 9 times out of 10 for them, it'll be easier to add the filter on as opposed to putting that data point in the report. So that's why I'm like, make sure you're making that distinction.
I'd rather filter out. I'd rather have comprehensive and filter out.
What I don't want.
And try to build the filters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, so you wanted business unit company
How
codes?
does filtering the reports play into your individual kind of widgets and your own dashboard? So everybody's sort of setting up their own things. So if they have specific reports, like Sharon would have, you know, one report for MMG or whatever the group might be, then could she set that up specifically for her and would just run that same report every single month?
Mm-hmm. You can set all of them up in your own personal folder if need be. So if you have somebody create a report for you and you then specified it further or said, hey, I like this report, can you go ahead and make it for X, Y, and Z reason? You could just save that to your own personal folder and run it every month, because I believe you guys are putting some sort of processy around the company folder.
Ideally, we're gonna have like, if a report is in the company folder, it's not gonna be editable by anyone else. Like it will be editable by Pam or myself or PSG, whoever creates it, but then once it's out there, I don't know. I don't even know if security can be built that way, but that would be my thought. And then what Lindsay suggested is that, you know, you kind of have a subfolder within the company folder. It's like, do not touch. So like, if you want to replicate a report and build off of it, you can copy it out of that folder into another folder, but
Everything in there.
But sometimes when you say do not touch, it's like worse.
Yeah.
So.
Touch it. All right, so for this one right here. Taking so long, press 3:45.
It's like system downtime.
Yeah. That's what we call it, okay. Now, it generally does not take this long. I don't know what's going on right now, to be quite
I'm not
honest.
watching it.
Saying, you know what, y'all, time to go.
So you look at that capacity to, your ability to process reports, every time I run a report.
It does take a while.
It takes enough time that you can put your head down for 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, they are, actually, they're working with, I forgot the name of the company that we're working with, but it is, the main focus of that company, being a consultant with us, is to increase, spacing and timing capacity. So load time in the next couple of months should start to get a lot better because of the release on the backup disk that we're adding.
Okay. And then another way around that alleviate would be to schedule your reports and just have them sent to you, right?
What?
Schedule reports to run every month.
Yes, those are, the only issue that you have with scheduling reports out is that if a report has this type of filter on it where it's a pop-up, what's going to happen is, you won't be able to schedule that report. So any report that has a pop-up on it, because the system is asking you to do something, you can't schedule it.
Okay.
But as long as there's no pop-up on here, you should be fine. So on this report, you're gonna get two different pop-ups. One's gonna ask you for an expiration date, and it's gonna give you a between range, meaning you're gonna have to tell the system, what range are you looking for? Are you looking for, you know, the beginning of the year and 2 years from now? Are you looking for, you know, the next 3 months? So you're gonna give it a range as to look for expiration dates within this particular range in the system.
What if we don't care, we want everything?
You could cancel it out and just delete the filter. It's gonna take a whole lot longer to run. So
If you ask everything, it's probably been run for about 3 years.
it'll
That's
run.
probably what this is doing right now.
But we do that frequently. So even though, you know, they're 10 years out plus, that's part of what, you know, planning, we're looking at that all the time. So it's not, we're not incrementally doing it 3 months or 6 months or 12 months.
You still do something like 10 years, 20 years, it'd still be a lot better than actually deleting it and just letting it run full blanketed on the system personally. Which is what I would kind of do. And honestly, if that's the case, I may not pull this report. I may actually build just a straight custom lease expiration report that's just a flat file where it allows you to run it that way and it's not taking up or not looking for as much data to pull into the report. So again, it's gonna, for this particular report, it's gonna ask you to put in a between period. So I'm just gonna pick, let's just do, actually, if I could do a greater than on this. You can swap out the different operators, so instead of the is between, you do a greater than and then run it blanketed. But again, I think it's probably gonna be a situation where it might not run. So I'll just do the in between and pick 2 actual dates in the system.
As we're waiting, well, once you run those dates and we're waiting, is there anything that we showed the accounting group this morning that we think we should show this group?
Your accounting group, they actually got these projections.
And, but these guys aren't abstract.
They're reports, but the problem is that they
Well, I
need to
love
go
Harbor Flex.
and actually.
You can get flat files. But I mean, you can get flat files that really don't.
But does that mean that we should
All the filters and stuff there I'm talking about, checking on issues.
I don't think it would.
You'll be very busy. Are any of those
Really easy,
videos
right?
or?
Don't feel like grabbing up.
The
So
abstraction
rather
process.
than, for instance,
Not the 3 that we did, but there's more that
No, they'll be,
Here's a Harbor Flex right there.
yeah, we have to be in there.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll have to go to the end. Just to make sure I'm current. The 5877 is current.
And the face of the video.
And then whatever energy we want, if we want to watch the possible.
one is taking 4 hours.
Yeah.
For these reports, ginormous, and they're not what they're looking for.
Katie, I'm just, I was looking at your email that you forwarded
Yes.
to Tim and I can tell you, you guys had discussion about eliminating stuff that we need,
Okay.
okay? and one of them is entity name in two places, entity name was discussed, and they said, oh, no, we don't need this,
Why do you need it?
and we need it.
Why?
Okay, because we don't know all the department numbers and cost centers off the top of our head.
But they'll be in there. It's just not a grouping. It will exist in the system
I
somewhere.
know, but if we're gonna go into AMC and say, show me MMG, okay, if we wanna pull something up on the screen, you've eliminated that grouping for us to pull if we want to go right there.
Yeah, but if I'm keeping business unit, which is entity.
But we don't know business units off the top of our head, we need the name of.
Right, so what if I say, and I don't either, so what if I say, if the name of the business unit is 40101-MFSMC?
Yeah, but I don't know which MFSMC it is.
There's only one MFS, there's Franklin Square.
I know, but that's the
company.
That's the company.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then there's departments, and we need departments because it could be that Franklin has several different, or I'm thinking MedStar ambulatory, there's different departments under, we've got 70003, and
That's
there's,
business unit.
that's business units, but there's lots of different departments that tied to that entity, and we could be looking by specific department, because that department tells us as whether it's the White Square Building, the Lakeside A Building, the Lakeside B Building, the Southern Maryland Professional Building, Lafayette Center,
So we need to.
Bel Air, I mean, a vast, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
So that information will still exist in the system, it will just exist at the recurring charge level with our proposal. But you're saying.
well, we don't look at it we're not requesting from a recurring, I mean.
But if we have a report, I guess.
If you guys have looked at it like this, like just for accounting, it's like you looked at it purely from a financial accounting.
Well, we've asked people, but we're just not getting the right answers.
But that, I mean, to me, that's kind of what I'm seeing, like just that little bit of email discussion, it's like, they're looking at it as a pure financial data tool.
So how about we do this, and I don't wanna waste time on it today, because I agree, I've tried to run these decisions past the people that I thought would have the appropriate input, and I clearly haven't gotten answers that are actually applicable to the people that are using the information.
I mean, from the perspective of if we're using it really on all the leasing activity part of it that's gonna happen, there's other.
Do you have time tomorrow to talk about this? I don't have time today, because I gotta.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah,
Me?
you and somebody else.
I am out Friday and Monday.
Okay.
I'm out Friday and Monday. Not here.
Everybody knows that.
Harry.
You're gonna see what Lindsay just said.
I'm worried about our grouping. Let's think of that.
We're doing that all the
You
time.
called one another.
And Molly's the flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has black underneath and the tan on top.
So if I schedule a call Tuesday?
So like, I'm waiting to see if I have to be in Montgomery on Tuesday, and I'm booked in the
Unless you wanna
morning.
hang now, but I don't.
I can't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, this is,
Yeah.
I apologize for not having thought to reach out to you.
It doesn't have to just be me, there's like.
No, and Adrian more than once said, I don't use it, but we should check with Realty Avenue, and we've been kind of deferring to Kathleen, who is the AMT person,
Yeah,
but that's not the right person.
No, I mean, she just.
It's what they are. Yeah. Oh, but even on AR, it just sounds like we're just not getting.
No, because she doesn't handle all the actual
Right,
real
she's not
estate
doing
she's not doing the
the
work
back end work.
here. So,
Tuesday morning, maybe?
I am booked Tuesday morning. I'm waiting for people to, I'm on hold for my open time slots to wait to hear if I'm doing a meeting at Montgomery. I can only tell you something tentative, and that would depend on whether I have to go to Montgomery or not. I might have to cancel on you. And that would be, I'm actually booked through noon already on Tuesday. And I could potentially meet with you on Tuesday afternoon
for a little bit.
What you doing?
Assuming I don't have to go to Montgomery, if you wanted to do.
I'm gonna be in White Marsh Tuesday afternoon, but I could do a call, but not till like 4:30 or.
Okay, and then Wednesday, I'm open on Wednesday, again, I don't know if they're gonna ask for the Montgomery meeting to be on Wednesday, so if you want.
This is my life, I just schedule meetings in other meetings, so I don't have to spend 18 emails back and forth.
If you want to schedule something, are you here on Wednesday?
I'm here Wednesday, but here's my problem, like, PwC is refreshing this data like as we speak, and we need to get these groupings nailed down, and I thought they kind of were, so it sounds like we need to.
And I don't think it should just be me.
No.
I mean, I think
You,
it would
Kim,
have to be
probably somebody from PSG.
him, because, you know, they're using it. I know what I know, I'm dangerous because I know what I know.
Was it portfolio solution group, right? Portfolio.
Yeah, wait, do you think they should be on?
No, they asked what it was.
Okay.
Well, they're the ones that are gonna be managing going forward, so I think it's good for them to hear the conversation, even if they don't necessarily have input to it.
I mean, I can tentatively say I can do a call or meet on Tuesday, because you want to do this on Tuesday.
Could we do Tuesday, like 4:30, maybe? I know that's late for a meeting, but I'm in.
Okay, so you want to meet or you want to call?
And to interact.
Call, WebEx or call is fine. I mean, honestly, in person would be better, but I'm up in White Marsh, and it sounds like you might potentially be at Montgomery, so.
I mean, so you definitely want to do it Tuesday, is what you're saying.
If you're out tomorrow, Monday, yeah.
Yes, I am, so I don't know, I can do a call or whatever, 4:30, I don't know if you
I
can,
have to
Kim.
be somewhere 5.
Okay, so we.
Wednesday morning, early? There's no difference between 4:30 Tuesday and
That's, I
9
can
a.m.
do.
Wednesday, really, right?
Okay.
No, not
I don't know what your Wednesday looks like.
Yeah, Wednesday morning, fine.
All right, I will see, when PSG might be available, and we'll try and get something.
All right, I'll put
Wednesday morning, so hold your Wednesday morning for
I'll
me. if
hold
you can.
it, but I've already given it out to Montgomery, so if they come back with that, I might not be able to, so.
Is your meeting long at Montgomery? Is it like an all-morning thing?
And it should only be about an hour, but then there's travel, so.
Okay. I would want you to be able to be in front of your computer, so let me just, Pam, you wanna be part of this?
At 4:30 on Tuesday?
No, or Wednesday morning.
I could do that.
I'll put you as optional in the email. I'll just copy you, and then once we get it scheduled, I'll put you as optional.
Well, other than grouping, I would say, if anybody has some time, probably over the next, 2 weeks or so, take some time, go through the reports that you guys need, give samples to the PSG team, and tell them explicitly what you would like in the reports. Let them know about filters and anything else that is running. And then let them generate some files for you that you guys can have to run the same existing reports that you run now. That's going to be my only suggestion, unless you'd like to have a couple of more report builder trainings and learn all this from scratch.
Well, I think we'd like improved reports. We've already shared with PSG that we already don't like the reports we're getting out of AMG. We've already had that discussion with them.
How long ago was this?
That week.
Yeah, recent.
Okay, so you've had the discussion, have we supplied them with anything that we like?
I want to say, what did they say? They came back with that they were going to be, because the database was, because the environment was changing, the database was changing, that all the reports were going to be different anyway. That's the statement that they made.
Yeah, so when we transition stuff out of the existing AR environment and put it into this new environment where everything will be combined, we're gonna have to rebuild reports anyway.
They disappeared anyway.
Yeah, we can't carry stuff over. We could build the same report, but it sounds like you don't like the reports that exist, so we can build a different report.
No, so what we told them on the AR side, we're gonna send them old samples from MRI, because what we got to some degree out of MRI were very succinct and simple, to the point, what we needed, if they can improve upon that, great, And then from the AP side, there's probably standard reports that you guys are using already that give you exactly what you need, okay?
And then we are gonna want probably something that's similar to, we should go through Harbor Flex and just, the standard reports that we have that do give us the whole portfolio, but it's a whole flat file with a filter on every single column for every, single field, okay, where we need data, where we can filter it or, eliminate it if we don't want to. I mean, I think that's probably the simplest way to go at it. We're always looking for improvements on the document, the reports that we get, but.
The biggest thing on the reports is just having them, if we could do a one-pager for everything, even if it's on the 11 by 17, that's what we want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
Line by
the
line.
AMT reports, there were 50 pages, like a rent roll, for MRI, a rent roll was either 1 page or a page and a half. You run a rent roll for a building out of AMT and it's 35 pages. We're like, why is it 35 pages? And it's because it can't, for some reason, it can't provide everything on a single line, and it's, it's just, so it may take some time for PSG to build the reports the way we want them, but that's the way we need them. Because this team is, we're so busy doing the work that we need to do. That we don't have time to be like in the system for hours just trying to get, because we're trying to get to a meeting and, let's run a quick rent roll. And you can't, so.
Yeah, I would definitely say just make sure you're getting that information over,
We can
samples
do that.
over. And, I think also going to that, knowing that it may not be exactly what you want, but they'll try to get as close as possible.
Yeah, at least close. And from the AR side, what we can do is pull the reports we used to do out of MRI, and those are reports that PSG is supposed to be delivering on a monthly basis. And originally, it was the information and format that certain folks in general accounting would say, yeah, this is what we're looking at, this is what we need, like cash detail reports or something like that. And I do know that Adrienne sometimes struggles, but what's great about AMT.
Like nitty-gritty and.
Yeah, what's great about AMT is that it's web-based, so that now general accounting can actually go into the system and actually, they know how to use it, and they can pull certain things out, and they can pull transaction ledgers themselves, especially when they're doing their bank, their reconciliations at the end of the month.
They did express similar concerns to what you did about the departments, but we thought we could leverage reporting for what they would need it for, not realizing that you also use that for different administrative purposes. So we should definitely revisit that.
Okey-dokey.
Other than that, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. I understand that. Sorry that there was a lot.
You got something out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys didn't know. You were in a different,
but it's good, at the end of the day.
We let you know what we need.
Exactly, I think that's probably the bigger thing here is that you guys are expressing kind of what you need out of the system to make it work for you, so you got the opportunity to express that.
And can you guys send me and PSG some of those sample reports, or should I send an email about that?
I already have them.
Sherry.
All the different ones that people mentioned when we were going around in the beginning, and anything that came up in the conversation.
Harry's.
Including the, I don't know if you know